Hello, and welcome to Revamped, a rewatch podcast that revisits my top favorite shows and movies. I'm your host, Brandon Alexander, joined by my co-host,
Courtney Autumn.
Venture with us as we set our sights on the infamous Hellmouth to cover 90s cult classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Follow along from the beginning, spoiler-free, as Courtney views the show for the first time and I revisit the series for new takes and a fresh perspective on its narrative.
Each season, every episode, in order, we will follow Buffy Summers and her friends to examine their character development, the show's underlying themes, along with its major story arcs, all while engaging in conversations, sharing our own authentic thoughts and feelings to what's unfolding before us.
So sharpen your stakes, load your crossbows, and join us as we explore the supernatural world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's get into the episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to our Buffy Season 1 finale. Holy hell, that went by so fast. I can't believe we're already here, mate.
I know, it's crazy.
I'm so excited though, because not only did we hit a huge accomplishment, because most podcasts I hear don't make it very far into recordings before they give up or quit in some way, and we have made it all the way through our first season by the end of this episode recording. And let's face it, the Buffy fans know Season 1 is the hardest to get people to go through and into the show with the hardest to get people to watch. But that just means we get to move on to Season 2 next. If anything, I am totally fueled up and ready to go. And so excited for what Revamped is about to journey into, which to say Season 2 is undoubtedly agreed upon by all as a top-tier season in multiple ways. I am beyond thrilled for us to get into those stories and arcs and character development and see all your reactions to it. But before we get there, we have to do this one. And I am pleased to announce that this is my favorite episode of the season. I think I've said that across the whole thing. Like, the finals, my jam, like, it's always the thing. But I had to secure that for anyone just starting here potentially, because some people don't want to listen to Season 1, so they're going to be like, let's do Prophecy Girl and go the journey with them. This one also ranks in my top 5 favorite episodes across the whole series too, for many reasons, but for start, it's just iconic. I even chose her look from this episode to be my Buffy tattoo that I have on my arm, in her gorgeous white dress, black leather jacket, complete of course with staple crossbow. You know, Courtney, the one that she struggled. But this one means so much to me because it is the original final ending, the conclusion to the powerful story of Buffy's acceptance in her role as the Slayer, and a testament to her strength and skill to hunt the vampires. Here we are. This is going to be a special one, so let the show begin. Season 1, Episode 12, Prophecy Girl. Aired June 2nd, 1997, and was written and directed by Joss Whedon, in his first time directing and writing the whole thing and doing everything. I feel like he wrote some other episodes or directed, maybe another for Kill a Boy on the First Date, but I might not be accurate on that, so don't fact check me. But now, actually, this is the season finale of Buffy, where Giles discovers an ancient prophecy depicting the harrowing fact that Buffy will face the Master and she will die. Buffy, learning this, aims to abandon her post, but when major apocalyptic events start to unfold and the death toll begins to rise, placing her friends and family in danger, she reaccepts her role and faces her fear to confront the Master. Now, before getting into our initial thoughts and jumping into the episode, you may have noticed in the description, or if you follow us on our Instagram and saw our announcement there, but if not to either, we want to announce and share that we have some fantastic guests with us today. To me, it just didn't feel right to dive into Prophecy Girl without inviting these two wonderful hosts of their own Buffy podcast to join the conversation and help us conclude Buffy Season 1 here on Revamped. Courtney and I are delighted to be joined by Steph and Cara of Prophecy Girls, a Buffy Rewatch podcast. Welcome, you dirty girls.
Hey-o.
Hello.
Calling us the way we like to be called.
I know. Be like Monica from Friends.
I know.
But I had to. Yeah,
Yes,
thank you
we
for
are.
coming to hang out with us.
Thank you for inviting
us.
us. Yeah.
This would be your second time recording this episode of Prophecy Girl, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm speaking for myself. Yes. Unless Cara's off there recording Prophecy Girl
I've actually been
elsewhere.
making the rounds. I've been on all the podcasts.
I knew it.
Speaking of dirty, filthy animals.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, your coverage for this episode aired originally on April of 2021, nearly 3 whole years ago, especially now that you guys have concluded your journey through all 7 seasons as of this past June of 2024. What is it like journeying back for this specific one for you?
First of all, what is it like getting our stats thrown at us like that? Whoa!
I certainly did not remember when we recorded or
No.
when we released this. Yeah, no.
Yeah. If you had paid me money, I'd have been like,
2.5
I don't
years.
know. Yeah, that's incredible. How did it feel for me? I loved it. I love
Three and a
going
half
back
years.
and taking a peek at what came before all the other stuff that we covered. Because it is like it's like a time warp, right? Because when we left the show in season 7, Buffy is 22 years old. She's a woman. She's been through hell and back multiple times. So to come back to this episode, I said it before we started recording. It's just like getting a little bit of an innocent time back for a
Yeah.
brief time.
To be back where the concerns are high school concerns
Mm-hmm.
and not like more adult concerns that we see later in the series. You know, Steph and I are currently recording Angel rewatches, and Angel, of course, is a different show. Its tone is more grown up and darker, and it's based in LA. This was a nice little like vacation from that, and it was nice to go back to those roots. And I've said this multiple times. This episode of season 1, say what you will about season 1 in general, but this episode of season 1 is top tier TV. And it's so good. Like it is easily one of the best episodes of the whole series, and it still stands up today.
Yeah, I went public on our TikTok channel and I named it in the top 10 Buffy episodes of all time. So, Courtney, I understand that this is the first time you're watching the show. I really hope you enjoyed this one because this is
I mean,
one
there's
of
a
the best
reason we
ones.
named ourselves Prophecy Girls, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I meant to ask you guys, obviously, understanding that it came from this episode, I assume your podcast name. Did you guys have any kind of backup podcast names, or were you right away like, this is what we're naming it?
No, it was always going to be Prophecy Girls. But you know what I did is I just went into Buffy episode list and I was like, well, Dirty Girls is a little, that's misleading. But now that we're done the show, it's not that misleading. I almost wish that we had gone that route. Bad Girls was another choice, but I was like, no, Prophecy Girls makes all the sense. Prophecy being, one of the biggest supernatural elements of this show. And the fact that we're 2 girls out here podcasting, right? Or 2 women, right?
Yeah, it so applies. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
so
it.
we loved it. That's why it was always going to be that.
It just makes the most sense. That's why you
Yeah,
guys had to
it's a
come on for
perfect name.
this.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I can
Yeah.
definitely also see why it's a top voted episode, probably amongst most people who are Buffy fans, because I feel like I'm going to love this episode for a long time in spite of what's to come.
Top 10 for a reason. It's like, I think I have it in the fun facts later, but Joss Whedon, it's in his top 10 as well, which usually are the episodes that he writes and directs and stuff. If you guys wanted to take a opportunity to let us know more about you or give us a little context into your life, your story with Buffy and your podcast to our listeners and those who don't know of you yet, if you would like to do any of that, feel free.
Cara?
this is my job. Well, I mean, Brandon, thank you for doing the work for me with that wonderful introduction that I feel like you know more about the podcast than we do at this point. Certainly you know when things were broadcast, which is more than I can say. Yeah, so we've been podcasting about Buffy for 3.5 years now. We have done the entire series, and it's a wonderful ride. We've enjoyed it, and we took a little bit of a break, and now we're going to be releasing Angel, starting with season 1 coming out sometime around the end of January 2025. And yeah, Steph and I know each other from working together back in the day. And then about 4 years ago, Steph was like, hey, do you want to do a Buffy rewatch podcast? And I said, sure. And it just kind of took off from there. We were doing it pretty much every week for 3 years, and we finished Buffy, and we said, let's just take a step back. And we knew we were going to do Angel, but we wanted to revamp how we did it. Unintended. Yeah, we love it. We both love Buffy. We've both watched the series multiple times. It means a lot to both of us. And the way that we approach things on Prophecy Girls is we're watching the show and then analyzing it through a 21st century lens. So for us, Steph and I both studied English in university. I'm a math teacher and an English teacher. Like, we love media criticism, and we are both feminists, and we both really want to look at this show that has often been lauded as a feminist show and critique it. And obviously, like, we're celebrating the show because it is amazing and it's wonderful, and the acting and writing and everything about it is incredible. And it deserves to be applauded and remembered 25 years later. But it's also really problematic. And it deserves to be criticized and picked apart as well. So that's what we try to do on Prophecy Girls. And we're spoiler free. So anybody who's listening to Revamped is like, you know what? I'd like a second opinion. You can go back and you can listen to all of our episodes too.
Nice.
Oh, I should add in there too, though, like while we've been on this journey with Buffy, we've met so many, hundreds, it feels like, of Buffy fans and people who listen to the podcast, and Brandon is one of them. And we love supporting other Buffy podcasts or other
Yes.
Buffy creators in any way that we can. So when you asked us to join you, we're obviously like, yeah, we're there. Just let us know when. And we're so happy you chose this episode. But more importantly, it's so nice to meet you finally face to face and be here to help out and lend our voices.
Yeah, the community that, has built up around in terms of our listeners, people in our Discord, people who comment on our social media, people who write into the podcast, and getting to be guests on other people's podcasts, having people on our podcast, like that was great, especially because, we started this at the tail end of the height of the pandemic, and we were both like, not just bored, but like creatively unfulfilled. So, podcasting is a good outlet for that. And I'm not going to speak for Steph, but it has really, really built up my confidence. And I'm doing things these days that I never thought I would be doing because I've had that experience of podcasting and everything that comes with it. So I love it.
So to give a little bit of backstory to you, Cara, before we came in here, had asked what made me want to do the podcast and all that kind of stuff. To give a little preface, I was a hairdresser for a really long time, so I had a huge creative outlet. As a hairdresser, you're creating something, and I've always been an artist, so I love to make content and produce anything beautiful. Earth energies always like to do that type of stuff. And after I quit hairdressing to become a massage therapist and left that career behind, I was lacking something in my life. And I forgot to say this part to you, Cara, but this has been a great outlet for that. So that being said, when I became a massage therapist, I started listening to the podcast because I got really bored listening to like the HD frequencies are in the room, or like the calming piano, soft melodies, like all that type of stuff. I was like, I need to listen to something fun, something that can hold my focus and I can still do my work, not music. So I'm not speeding up on people and like still make their service relaxing. And I fell upon listening to Buffy podcasts, and you guys were one of the first that I listened to other than buffering, because I think buffering is just the obvious start of all this. Then I found you guys. You made my life a lot better just saying that now, because I didn't write that in my thing. Like, it was so much fun to go to work and have 4 massages to do and not have to just stare at the wall. I could listen to something and laugh in my head and sometimes chuckle out loud, and people are like, what the fuck are you laughing for? Like, not because of this mole on your back, I promise. Of course, as I said, being the title episode and the chosen name of your podcast, I had to invite you guys here for a special merging of podcasters and now Buffyverse siblings, so to speak. But as most of our listeners know from our introduction episode, Welcome to Sunnydale, where we talked about ourselves and our plans with the podcast, I dropped that I chose to make this show as my love letter to my favorite series, to honor my sister who has passed, that I grew up watching the series with, together like on repeat every day, all day for the most part, and seal my passion for Buffy with a kiss by creating my own Buffy Rewatch podcast. But I do have to credit that I wouldn't have went back and forth on the idea or even know that this was going to be a thing if it weren't for our predecessor podcast, specifically Buffering, Becoming Buffy, and of course my favorite Prophecy Girls podcast. Listening to you, I found myself immersed in hilarious moments, stories of our heroine and the bonds formed over Buffy through your friendship, and just overall enjoying listening to you guys talk about your similar love for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Over the course of your show, I found myself binging every episode and eventually catching up to you in real time as you concluded season 6, and even becoming a Chosen One supporter on your Buy Me a Coffee page. I've laughed with you, I've cried with you, I've Xander slandered with you, and hell, over here we even praise Moloch with you guys. So for that, I just have to say thank you, because you girls are a big part of why I chose to do this.
Praise Moloch.
Praise Moloch. In his name. That is so sweet. Thank you so much.
Side note too, every single time in this script I wrote Cara's name, it tried to autocorrect her name to karaoke. So I was like, maybe that's a sign that we should get you to sing us something before the end of the episode.
You don't want that.
I'll do it.
Steph will sing.
Some Disney song, probably.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So to get into some initial thoughts, I've already said this, but Prophecy Girl is one of my top episodes for season 1. And the series, we get the final step into Buffy's acceptance as a Slayer before we get the huger dynamic and tonal shifts that the series is moving toward. But leading up to now, we have been with her on this journey this season and seen how she changes and juggles wanting her normal life versus being the chosen one. This episode, her energy is put to the test as she experiences some pretty hefty emotions for a teenage girl, and she ultimately decides to do what she was chosen for, no matter what that means for her. I digress. Poor Buffy. A lot of elements are presented to us within it also, and this is the moment we have been waiting for, her confrontation with the Master and with her destiny. Courtney, what did you think? And even more so, the fact that we were watching this episode for the first time together for our podcast.
Well, first and foremost, I love watching the episodes with you in person, and I wish that that could be more of a thing. But I love this episode. Like I said, I think it's going to be one of my favorites. It was packed with everything. It made me laugh and it made me cry, and I was scared and I didn't know what to expect, and it just filled all the little pockets that I need filled when I'm watching something. So yeah, like Cara said, it's just really good quality TV. It was great.
All right, great. What are you guys' initial thoughts, Steph and Cara? Revisiting the episode at that, like watching it. Cara, you said a little bit beforehand. I wish I had been recording that to snip it in here because it was so
I can say it
beautiful.
again.
But if you got it like that, spit it out.
So, watching this, having watched all 7 seasons of Buffy and picked them apart like a critical analysis for the podcast, we did our own episode on Prophecy Girls, and our perspectives have changed just from rewatching the whole series. This episode has foreshadowing, whether intentional or not, for a lot of things, characterization, even plot points going forward in the series. And the contrast is also very stark here. Not just the appearances and the fashion and everything, but like the scope of the problems among these characters. It's so high school, and that's so different from the more tragically adult problems that we face later in the series. It was nice to go back to that. I was really struck by characters like Giles, where in this season, he's such a librarian. And without going into spoilers, all of the characters go through a great deal of development and change over 7 seasons, to the point where once you get to season 7, they're very different. The younger characters like Buffy and Willow and Xander have grown up. They have become adults. And although Giles, I guess he also grows up, but like Giles starts off the series as an adult, but we learn more about his backstory. And I think that they make some really interesting choices with how to shift Giles's portrayal throughout the series. And we see glimpses of that in this episode, but it's also just like you're going back here and you're just like, oh, wow. Also, and I think, Steph, you will agree with me on this, it was really nice to see Joyce again.
Joycey. Joycey. And she buys her that dress. Yeah, it's nice to come back and revisit these characters and see them at the beginning again. I was blown away with this episode once again because of Sarah Michelle Gellar. I thought this the first time we watched it around, me and karaoke. But now that I'm done, now that we've went through all the way to season 7 and I'm going back and looking, I'm just like, they really struck gold with Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I feel like this season, because it's so rocky, it's up and down, mostly down, you don't really get to see the shining star that she is. And this is an excellent episode to showcase what she can do. Like her speech with Giles and Angel in the library, like it doesn't get better than that. What a monologue, like what a delivery of these lines, and to show the heartbreak and pain that Buffy feels being 16 years old and having to die. It's incredible. And we see Buffy go through it again and again and again and again, all the way through the series. But this is truly the first time we really see it, and it's impactful.
You never forget your first apocalypse.
You never forget. You never forget.
Second for her this season.
Oh,
averting. This is a true one. They really have to work hard for this one.
Right.
Have y'all caught over the last couple of days, especially yesterday, the Dexter Original Sin panel that went down in Brazil, and Sarah Michelle Gellar was on stage and she got this huge praise, and she just stood up and started crying on stage because everybody was there, obviously there to see her. Like, who knows these other people? But I was like, look at SMG, like my heart for you forever.
Something I learned just from being on social media the last couple of years for Buffy is that that Buffy has an enormous following in Brazil.
Yeah.
Like a lot of Brazilian fans had reached out over TikTok to just be like, we love Buffy so like they came just to be like, oh, I see that you're posting about Buffy. We love her here. Like she's
Yeah.
constantly playing here.
Well,
And I had no idea.
Also, just the fact that Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy is still her most prominent role because obviously she's been in a few other things, but she basically retired from acting for a long time to raise her family, which is an incredibly valid and probably very healthy choice. And it's only in the past couple of years that she's really made the decision, now that her kids are grown, to come back and take on some smaller roles here and there. That's a testament to Buffy and a testament to her performance as Buffy, that she is not only remembered but celebrated, and people desire to see her, right? And as Steph said, and I could not put it better myself, her performance in this episode is the sign that they made such a good choice to cast Sarah Michelle Gellar, because, you know, season 1 is her making Buffy her own role versus Christy Swanson's portrayal in the original movie. And there is no doubt after you watch this episode that she has made the role her own, and she was the right choice for it.
Absolutely.
Totally agree.
We stan our queen forever and always. All right, great. Well, I guess we can get into the episode now officially.
In every generation, there is a chosen one. She alone will stand against the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness. She is the Slayer.
Previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The Master has been trapped so long he can barely remember what it was like on the surface. We were reminded of Angel, the vampire in love with the Slayer. This being rather poetic to Giles, the Anointed, a kid named Colin, is brought to the Master, and the prophecy states the Slayer will not know him and he will lead her into hell. Finally, the Codex, which holds the most complex prophecies in the final days of the Slayer, has been given to Giles by Angel. We open at the Bronze, where Xander is professing, "You know how I feel about you. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? There's never been anyone else for me but you. And we're good friends, and it's time to take the next step." We pan over to see Willow in front of him, looking dreamily as he finishes, "Would you, date me?" His face goes sour, and he states, "Oh, that's good. Date me. That's terrible, right?" Willow snaps back into reality, the one where Xander is practicing on her, his speech to ask Buffy out. Willow agrees he does not have it down, so he tries again with the mentions of going to the dance with him, then leading into mates finding partners, and he grows aware how this sounds and how much he sucks at this. Willow just sits there eating snacks as he embarrasses himself, but being a great friend in the moment, assuring him he's doing just fine. He arrives at the fact that he should just be direct and ask her out, something simple like, "Hey, I like you, let's go to the dance together." He is hyped and says that he's got to do it now, but Buffy's not there, Willow reminds him, offering for him to practice on her some more. He really needs to do it now, so he doesn't fester on it till the next day. She hasn't shown up at the Bronze tonight, wondering what could she be doing. Willow confirming to him, "Oh, you know, the usual." And then we get the best fucking scene ever in the world for everything. We cut across town outside to a car parked on grass near the school, pausing there for just a moment before we see Buffy's body come slamming down onto the ground from it in the air. Inside the car, Cordelia pulls away from her man's kiss, and you guys notice that that's not Mitch from the episode literally right before. Out of mind, out of sight. She was not even with like this dude was named
That
Kevin
guy
or
got
something.
beat up.
I was
That
like,
guy
what the fuck?
That guy's all black and blue. He got beat up by Marcy, so he's gone.
You're right. He's probably still in the hospital.
He's dead. Somebody killed him
dead.
before this.
No doubt dead.
Either way, they go back and forth about what was that, and he's like, "It was nothing, let's keep making out." And outside, Buffy stares upward at this vampire, and he stares down to her. In slow motion, she rolls backwards and brings herself back up to her feet, posing in the fist up fighting stance that we all love to see. The vampire growls, smiling, while looking at his prey, getting ready to pounce on her. We pan behind Buffy's back to see her slipping an arm back into her shirt and then sliding out her iconic stake slowly out to her side. We see the vamp's eyes fall to it, and his smile fades into realization. This isn't prey. He knows who she is. She looks at him and gives him the slyest smile we've ever seen, paired with the cutest head tilt because she is reveling in this energy. And Joyce would be proud because more than anything, she's got the positive energy flowing.
But we know what those really are, right?
Oh, we got comments. Wait till we get there. He growls once more and then moves to attack her. But when we are sped back up in real time, she delivers a roundhouse kick to his face. Another leg comes up to kick him in the face a second time, and she implants the wood into his chest. He falls back, exploding into dust as we get the 2 caper slay. And Buffy comments, "Wow.
3 in one night. Giles would be so proud."
We rave about 2 caper slays over here because I had told Courtney about the $2,000 it cost to generate the effect for vampire dustings.
Oh.
So that's our like little catch thing is
the
2K
2K
per
per
slay. So when we see it, because there's a lot of off-screen moments where we don't get to see real vampires die. So when we get one, we always shout out 2K per slay. This scene is badass, and she does him all of 2 seconds once it finally speeds back up out of that slow motion. And she is slaying like a motherfucker tonight, apparently. The look on her face too here always just gives me life. And this is the Buffy that we love. Strong, confident, and knowing she is going to slay, both metaphorically and literally.
I didn't know it costed that much to do those effects. I know at at one point, I don't know what episode, but like they just like throw dirt, like it's like off screen. There's sand just like thrown at them, like
The
oh my
trampoline.
God.
It's when they it's when she, I think myself thinking of it, it's when Darla's dusting the 3 and like she stakes down and then the dust explodes at me.
Yeah.
Courtney said they had a trampoline and they threw like a bowling ball on
Yeah.
it and it's puffed up in her face. I said it was like White Chicks where they run up and it's like blowing through their hand and it's like all the things. But we've seen some pretty horrible dustings on the show, and thankfully this one is like they fine-tuned it a little bit. I was in high gratitude for the effect getting tweaked, so it's probably 3K per slay now.
I just love the slow motion shots. It's iconic.
I'm also hoping that the slow motion is also given to Cordy while she's making out with the new Mitch, because I mean, is it just Buffy herself, or is it everybody?
It's everyone.
Good for her.
They should slow it down there so we can really take in that she's moved on since last episode, which was like yesterday.
What time is it? What day is it? We don't know.
Giles, I found out for the first time, does have a calendar that says June in the back of him when he's in his office later. So I'm thinking it's like June 1st and they're getting out of school late this year.
Nice.
Obviously.
We pan over top the school, most likely the ravishing rooftop vibe that leather jacket homeboy in episode 1's cold open was mentioning to Darla that you could see the whole town from. We peer in from the glass on top to see Giles below in the library, directly underneath researching in his books. Of course, they actually had to show us this viewpoint so we understand where they are at for later as the master gets up there. And it's a nice callback and foreshadowing that home dude gave us in the first episode. I have no clue what his name is. He's just dead in an instant. And then later here in this episode, the master is up there commenting on how beautiful the world is. And I just couldn't help but be like, he's up there as a foreshadow saying that this is his beautiful world. And the guy was saying he was raving about how good it looks up there. And I was like,
did the
I noticed that for
library
the first
always have a skylight?
I know. I don't think we ever saw it from the upward shot or
Surprise.
even panned out enough to where we could see the ceiling. Convenience factor, perhaps. He moves to his office where we see him reading the codex and having tea. He reads the Latin text, translating slowly his words to, "The master shall rise." Getting excited, he has found the passage that he's been searching for. This is it, he states. He repeats again, translating more into English. The master shall rise, and the slayer will, his words stop, and he is not pleased with what he's read, as he states aloud, "My God." He pauses, taking it in, then to read again, grabbing for his teacup, which starts to clank, vibrations making it shake, everything on his desk, and of course his tea toppling over onto the ground as he gets up alarmed, realizing an earthquake has started. Giles is working over here day and night, though. He looks stressed. You can tell he's been working effortlessly since pretty much that book got to him, which I'm surprised he hasn't already deciphered this within 2 seconds, because he can read 5 languages. So how have you not just opened the book and been yes, right here, this passage? Giles was slacking in the beginning. Also, the earthquake takes place just whenever the prophecy, he figures it out, he reads that sentence, and then the world shakes.
Maybe Giles reading the prophecy is what initiated it.
He brought it into existence.
Maybe.
Probably.
It's the energy out there. Sometimes it happens. He manifested it instantly.
Right?
At the bronze, obviously, we see people running by. Xander pulls Willow underneath the staircase, which I was happy for, because we're look at Xander actually having some common sense for a change. Cordelia and her mans are seen in her car, and then we see Buffy, the same destructive sounds happening around the town. Giles moves into his office door frame, taking notice to the walls in the library splitting, along with the floor having major cracks appear in them. We pan down from above to below, and the master is swelling as his hands extend above him, sucking in the energy, glorifying the moment. He calls out,
"Yes! Yes! Satyrs! This is a sign. We are in the final days. My time is come. Glory! Glory!" What do you think? 5.1?
The shaking stops, and we see the anointed Colin nearby on a rock, having braced himself. What do you think, 5.1? Referring to, of course, the Richter scale's earthquake magnitude of strength. But the master is so fucking excited right now. This shit was giving me like all the rave from him. I was like, good for you. I don't want this to happen for you. But I was like, he is happy as fuck because obviously the last time that an earthquake happened, he got trapped down here. So he knows this is a portent for himself, being like the final days are here.
Can I be a hater for a moment?
Absolutely.
Do it.
How does the master know about the Richter scale? It wasn't invented until like the early 20th century.
Colin told him.
We're learning
Colin
about the
knows
Richter scale
all
in
about the
school.
Richter scale.
Oh,
Yeah.
was that his hyper focus?
Yeah. Missed Colin. Like, I forgot that Colin was part of the show. And he's such a big part. This is the only episode that he's relevant. Like, he's been around, obviously, but like his job, it happens.
His job is done now.
His job, it happens in this episode where he just
They should have called
walks
him the
Buffy
usher.
down he's the usher.
We call him Thomas.
Tom. Well, he's not anointed. Like, I learned later on that anointed is like when you're covered in ointment or something, like you're wet. I don't know. He's not.
He didn't come out of the
They did
blood
anoint him in
river.
blood. Yeah.
Did they really? Okay. I
Yeah.
don't
He
remember
said he
that.
didn't.
Anyway, hi Colin.
What do y'all think Colin's up to these days? Like, has he appeared in anything else? Can we get him on the podcast?
Amazing.
It's like Chad Michael Murray, and we just didn't know. And
Oh, I would know. I would know
changed
if
his
that was
name.
Chad.
It's wasting no time on the cold open. We're jumping right in from this immediate earthquake within the first 5 minutes of the show and then all the things. But speaking of going right in, to get the Buffy theme. Bow, now, now, now. We were sitting on the couch last night together and we were like headbanging. And it's like a thing when you watch the, like, I can't skip the intro ever. The next morning, Giles walks from his office, and this poor man looks like he hasn't slept in a week. He is pale and tired, looking as he moves to his caged book enclosure, fumbling through books, not even taking notice to Buffy walking in the door. You know, he's been up reading this passage over and over and over again since the moment that he figured out what it was. And I've never seen Giles look this stressed out, except for when Jenny was in the library freaking out during, like, the computer scanning project. She calls out a good morning to him, and he turns around to see her. She comments on the damage and asks if it's safe to be in there. He finally calls out her name, but it's a different tone than we've heard before. When he sees her, I'm almost about ready to cry every single time because the way he looks at her in this moment and turns around and says her name a specific way, I'm just like, my heart sinks. And I'm like, oh, fuck, it's coming. No. And also, it's just like he knows in this whole sequence that this may be his last interactions with her after what he's read. And obviously all that. And you can just tell that Giles cares so much already about Buffy. She asks if something's on her face with the way that he's just staring at her entranced. He tells her no, but yes, it's safe to be there, but not the best to be going up in the stacks. She comments on how he looks like he hasn't slept, and he says that he's been doing work. Her stating the same and that the things are getting hairy out there, and tells him of the 3 that she slayed the night before. One almost basically being on school grounds. He takes notice to their numbers increasing, her saying it was a close call. She's risking her life to fight the undead. He continues fumbling through his books, and she calls him out on being distracted, saying that he could exhibit some interest. He could go, and then he does as such, and she eye-rolls his gesture. He apologizes and states he's glad she's okay, giving that he can't really talk right now, though. Fine, that's okay. I can't put it off any longer. I have to meet my terrible fate, she says to him. He spins around, alarmed, stating, what? Biology, she confirms, and spins around for the school bell to ring and her to get off to class. Of course, he can't talk to her right now because he will then have to tell her, and he's just not ready, because if he gets to talking, I think it's just going to come out. After biology class, her and Xander and Willow exit into the courtyard, commenting on the boringness that the class was, to which all 3 agree on this fact, even Willow, the science nerd. Xander reminds Willow of the thing that she has to be off to, and it catches her off guard and she gets confused, but then after he pointedly looks at her, she was like, yeah, I have that thing, I gotta go, gets the fuck out of there, and she leaves the 2 of them. Xander chalks it up to her just being old Willow and asking her to join him in the courtyard for a seat so they can talk about something, obviously making her nervous in this moment, and they move over. He kicks that poor fucking dude. He's like, hey, you leave. And I'm like, you do not have this kind of power on campus, Xander, to be kicking people the fuck off a bench. Shit trips me out. But then we get our favorite scene. I'm sure it's you guys' favorite scene the whole episode because you guys love Xander over there on your podcast.
Oh, it's so romantic.
Yeah. Buffy's such a bitch.
They sit and he collects himself, but the nerves almost make him regurgitate the weird premeditated dance mating speech. He pauses and cries out, oh God. He recollects his courage, taking a big breath, and just states, Buffy, I want you to go to the dance with me, like me and you on a date. She doesn't know what to say. Him commenting she's not immediately laughing, so that could be a good sign. He goes on to tell her things that he likes about her and like how they've been slaying all this and had some crazy experiences, fought some monsters, and how it's all been a great time, but now expressing that he wants more. She tells him that he's one of her best friends and she doesn't want to spoil that friendship because that's what most people would do and like let you down easy. Like, please still be my friend. But no, he's not standing for that. He professes that neither does he, but the point is she either feels a thing or doesn't. She takes a moment looking away from him as he stares at her, then back to him to tell him she's sorry. She doesn't think of him that way. He's choking up, saying she could try, that he will wait. And I felt so bad for him right here because I was like, bro, I was like, you're so desperate. This is like a whimpering dog that you just watch like get shot and it's like dying or something. Like,
Really
it's like, it's awful. He's not getting put down easy, even though she was doing it super easy. But she says his name and he gets up, making a point that he guessed he's not the guy.
Forget it. I'm not him. And I guess the guy's got to be undead to make time with you.
And she calls the statement really harsh, and he apologizes, saying that he doesn't handle rejection well, which is really funny considering all the practice that he's had. She tries to apologize again, but he cuts her short and says, let's just not, and leaves her sitting there. And then Buffy's sitting there all solemn. She's like, fuck, that did not go well, even though she did everything she could have.
I have thoughts. I have no idea if this is going to sound similar to what we said in our episode. It's that line, I don't handle rejection well. It's just like, Xander. I have a thought. Can we maybe teach cis straight men how to handle rejection?
Yes.
Could that be like a course that they have to take, like a mandatory course in school? Like,
I
Will they
would
listen and
love
learn?
to put that in the suggestion box for all of the world.
Every ounce of it.
dude, okay, so you are aware of this. You are
Right.
emotionally intelligent enough to say, I don't handle rejection well, but somehow that's her problem?
We're not following through with the self-awareness. We just have it, and then that's it. That's the first and the last step. There's no taking the self-awareness with us.
Yeah. This scene just makes me really sad for Buffy because Buffy doesn't have very many friends. So it just really sucks that out of the two friends she has, the one claims that he, has feelings for her and he wants to take to the next step, and she just doesn't feel the same way. So what else can she do but tell the truth? And she does it in a very nice way. She could have just been like, nah, like that's not for me, sorry. But instead she was just like, no, I cherish our friendship. Like, you mean a lot to me, just not in that way. And I really want to keep being friends with you. But it's never going to be enough. It doesn't matter how nice she lets this guy down, especially if he's already like self-deprecating himself, being like, I'm not going to rejection. You'd think I'd be used to it because I get so much of it. Nah! And he gets mad and he leaves. And it's like, there was never going to be a winning situation for Buffy in this. Like, Xander spent, the first part of the episode figuring out how he's going to give a winning speech. But Buffy was never going to win. But it was always going to be about Xander, and then he made it about him. He left her feeling like shit. It's really unfair. Fuck you, Xander. Like that's how I feel. I don't feel bad for him. I don't feel bad for him at all.
Me either.
Okay, so for me, first off, he clearly at this point got to know before his talk with Buffy how she feels about him, because she friend zoned him the fuck out in episode 3 Witch when she called him one of the girls, and even has changed with him in the room because, like, obviously we all remember that scene from Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. She's like so comfortable with him that she lets him come in the room and stay in there as long as his back's turned, like whatever, be a gentleman.
He peeks.
And he peeks. But that's like a moment right there. Like, if she's interested in you sexually or romantically, she's not going to let you do that. That's just not a thing.
Let me just add that she changed with Angel in the room and he kept his back to her. Not that the bars on in hell, and it really doesn't mean anything, but in comparison, he didn't look where Xander peaked.
A perfect gentleman. And a lot of people too get the like that's what they say about him. What was I about to say? There's also that moment in episode 3 where they're talking in the hallway whenever she's going delusional in that moment, the spell that Catherine the Great put on her, and she's starting to get sick, and she's like, any other boy would like want to give me a bracelet and blah 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 blah. So she's already set this up kind of for him to like get a little bit of a hint and awareness, because I've heard other podcasts say that Buffy didn't know that this, like, Xander had this crush on her or anything like that. I'm like, this bitch knows. What are you talking about? She's just been being a good friend, and she's saying, let me focus on the friendship because I actually want to have something rewarding with this person, even though we never really get anything too rewarding from Xander, but we'll get there. Spoiler free.
I don't think there's anything wrong with Xander asking her out. Like, shoot your shot. Like, if it's like, get it also just like,
it's off his
your
chest.
system. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, that's fine. But like Steph said, Buffy masterclass in rejection there. Like, so good at letting him down gently. And he could have handled it so much better, especially as you said, Brandon, because he's had practice with that. But it's just like, I don't want to be hard on Xander for asking Buffy out because are we not all into Buffy? Like,
Yes, yes,
So
100%.
true.
Would be different.
you know, I get it, Xander, but also like just move on. Like that's part of high school too, right? Like high school is you get crushes, so I understand. Um, and you know, maybe you ask somebody out and you're probably going to get rejected, and then you move on, and it's not the end of the world. I know it feels that way to any teenagers who are listening to this right now instead of watching TikTok. I don't know why you're listening to a podcast, but you know, it feels like the end of the world, but it's not the end of the world, which is kind of the point of this episode.
But he's acting like
Oh,
it
that's
is. He has even stated in the past that like she's in love with a vampire. So the fact for him to like feel entitled to her, even though, you know, Angel's a vampire and dead, like it doesn't mean that he is more suitable. And obviously in his eyes he is. But like thinking that she should be with him, that's just not even a thing. Don't get me started on like his mating comments as well that he makes with both Willow and almost to her when he starts to regurgitate that. But
That's
he's
the
not here
hyena in him.
with him because I wanted to wrap all that up in this one sequence instead of talking about it whenever he was with Willow in the bronze. He was out here practicing on poor Willow, which you should also be hella aware since you've mentioned before that she needs to stop pretending that he wouldn't be satisfied with anyone other than Buffy in the pack. Like he says that to Buffy. So he already knows this thing, but he's like setting her up in this like childish energy, honestly, at the end of the day. It's just Xander in a nutshell. But the denial and rejection not being taken well, Buffy just let you down hella easy with care, but authentic and truthful to you. The fact that he expects a different outcome than this when it has to be set up to be this way for Jump, and him being harsh to her in the moment is red flag vibes. The fact that like this is your friend, you should be able to be like, okay, I'm actually sorry, not be harsh to her in the moment, and just like continue to hang out on the bench and like go about your day. It could just totally be just that easy, but it's not.
Putting down of Buffy that really got to me. You know, like I agree with what
Totally.
everyone's saying. Like, shoot your shot if you got it right. The dance is coming up. Ask her, but you don't have to make her feel like shit because you feel like shit because she doesn't like you back. That's not how it works.
Yeah, agreed.
After that scene, we flash back to Giles' office and he's on the phone with Angel, telling him that he needs to see him and how he can come at sundown. Jenny then appearing behind him, holding some folders and files. And I was like, even you last night, you were like, hey, Jenny, because we ain't seen that bitch since freaking iRobot you, Jane. It's been like 3 or 4 episodes now since we've seen her. She even has her hair all done up and got that beautiful red lip for Giles. Possibly said they might kiss because you know, we got the sexual tension you can cut with a knife with those two. But he doesn't notice this because, you know, his head's down in his books and he's got way bigger things in his mind than Jenny at this point. But she waits for him to get off the phone and she calls him out on being in the same outfit that he wore the day before, except now it's wrinklier, asking if he's been here since then. He gets a spook from her and turns around to face her in his chair, saying that he's sorry, not really up to socializing though at the moment. And she notates that she realizes something's going on and she is guessing that he already knows what it is. He asks what does she know, and she shows him the files that she has, saying that she's been surfing the net looking for unexplained incidents and how people are always sending stuff her way, knowing that the occult is her turf. She informs him of the latest, a cat the week prior having given birth to a litter of snakes. Fucking uber creepy right there. A family was swimming in a lake, and then the lake began to boil, and then how the night before a boy was born in a hospital with his eyes facing inward. She, alarmed, tells him that she's not stupid. She knows this is apocalypse shit, adding last night's earthquake as the cherry on top, and the end is obviously seriously nigh. He wonders if he can trust her. She reminds him of her helping him cast the demon Moloch out there on the internet.
Praise.
And how she's scared, not to mention she got this creepy monk emailing her about some anointed one, and then Giles stops her saying that he is dead, asking who the monk is. She tells him and says that he keeps sending out global messages about a prophecy, asking that she talk to him and find out anything that he knows. Her hesitant, while she knows jack nothing about what's going on, he demands her just do it and he will explain later, her saying that he better. I like that Jenny was here to like add some stuff and then obviously be support.
I'm just enjoying imagining Jenny communicating with these other people online through like an old school chat room or a message board where it's like, so did you hear about this prophecy? Right? Prophecy lol, Lamau, like you know how we typed back then. Then you get like the random drive-by spammer coming in and you have to like ignore them when they're like ASL and it's like you know, you're busy trying to talk about the end of the world and they're just like, yeah, like, oh, one moment, sorry, my cat walked across my keyboard.
Oh yeah, like all the oh my gosh. Moment in time, honestly. That's the best part about the show, revisiting it back too, is the nostalgia you get to just suck up.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the halls, Cordelia is chatting up her mans. They discuss setting up for the dance that weekend, getting things together like refreshments and the sound system. Guessing that Cordy's on the Sunnydale High event planning committee all of a sudden too, because she's out here coordinated. I mean, why wouldn't she be? But I didn't think Cordelia liked to take charge this way. But I guess she just has to make sure that this is going to run. But I didn't see her wanting to work and do all this
Maybe,
other stuff.
maybe because she won May Queen. If she's like the high court person, maybe this is her role. Maybe she has to like, plan the dance more thoroughly. I don't know.
She also mentions fellow Cordette Aura, who gets name dropped in an episode of Angel that we recorded recently. And for a moment, Steph and I were like,
Who?
Oh my
Who are
gosh.
you talking about?
Yeah, Aura's the girl from the locker room, Courtney, in the first episode. Whenever they're like, "Hey, Aphrodisia," she's the other girl that's with her, and they're like commenting on people's names and stuff.
The locker room. I forgot about the locker room.
We didn't. We keep seeing it.
Definitely not.
She tells him to bring everything to the bronze and she can meet him there in the morning. He agrees, done, and she calls him just the sweetest. He's absolutely just too sweet. She catches Willow walking toward them and calls out to her, telling her that she really likes her outfit. Willow calling her bullshit. Cordelia states, okay, she's lying, but she needs a favor and was trying to butter her up, informing her that the bronze won't let them use her sound system, so she needs a tech genius that can help them set up one. And she would be really, really grateful if Willow would show up tomorrow to help out, offering...
I mean, I talked to you at the dance and everything.
This interaction with Willow, though, it's a big step, obviously, in the contrast that we've seen Cordelia treating Willow in the past or in the beginning of the season, aka all of their life, because they've known each other since childhood. Courtney's favorite phrase was, "Be my deputy." She hated that whole thing. But the words here specifically are in contrast with her first statements that we got in Welcome to the Hellmouth, where she sarcastically comments on loving Willow's clothes and then obviously being a bitch to her and kicking her out of the water fountain. But here she does it in a different way, and this is a little bit of progress and a step forward. It's a bit friendlier.
Whoa. Let's not be too hasty. I mean, I also want to add in, I love Cordelia to death, but like there's something in it for her to be nice to Willow right now. It's not so much that she's growing as a person. Mind you, out of mind, out of sight is a big moment for her. But like she still, fucks them over at the end of that episode. So I just wanted to point out here that Cordelia is very much Cordelia still. We love her for it, but she needs Willow to do something nice for her, which is why she's like, I'm going to be a little bit nice to you in my way, which is actually not nice at all. So
yeah, it sucks. And that's how Cordelia is too. Like we don't get to see it yet, how she like can continue to grow. But then, like I said, this is just baby steps forward because she's not being as mean or just outright like awful and unpleasant to be around. Because even rewatching the first few episodes, I was like, fuck Cordelia, man. I was especially whenever she's with Willow in like the harvest or whatever, and she tries to chime in saying that Buffy's not a freak. She's talking about the night before and all that stuff. Like, I'm gonna kill you. And then she's like, who gave you permission to speak? Like she looked at Willow and said that, and I was just like, I do not like Cordelia in the first 3 episodes at all. And obviously that grows differently as we go on. But
and you're not supposed to, right? She's a mean girl. You're not supposed to like her until you do.
Right. The difference between Cordelia and Xander in season 1 is that Cordelia actually does start to grow and change. And Xander, as we have observed, he sees all the stop signs and he says, no, I'm going to keep going.
We're also supposed to not like Cordelia until we do. And we're supposed to adore Xander, the whole time through. But really, when you watch it, you're like, nah, no, Xander's not it,
Of course, in this motion, in the classroom next to them, Willow can see Xander sitting and they're tossing a ball at a wall. So she assures her that she'll be there and she walks off to go talk to him, asking him how the talk with Buffy went. He lets her know that it sucked ass and she tries to talk more about it, but he says that it doesn't matter apart from the no that she gave him, saying that also, she's still jonesing for Angel and could care less about him, once again pointedly putting that out there. He gets the clever idea happily that he and Willow should go to the dance together. They'll have the best time. What does she say? And then she says no. He's confused because he did not expect that. And she tells him,
I think I want to go to the dance with you and watch you wish you were at the dance with her. You think that's my idea of hijinks? You should know better.
She apologizes that it didn't work out for him, sighing, leaving them saying that she'll see him on Monday. He expresses to himself that he will just go home and listen to country music. The music of pain. Gross. I hate country music, just saying, out of there. Like,
I also hate country music, and also, I don't know if this is just too early, if this episode is just too early, but like, is not emo music the music of pain?
Yes, it should be.
Right.
I thought like pop punk music of that time period was I slow clapped Willow there because it's so easy to forget after you go through the entire series. And this is not a spoiler, Courtney, but like Willow changes a lot and she gets backbone. And it's
Mhm.
really easy to forget that she didn't start out that way. Watching season 1 is obviously a big reminder of that. But particularly this episode, she's a doormat at the very beginning of it. And then she gets backbone as the episode goes
Mhm.
through. First with Cordelia, calls her out in her shit right away. Just like and she stood up to Cordelia in her own way in the past with like the deliver, right? Back in the second
The
episode.
deliver.
Yeah,
Yes.
like so she did it like behind the scenes, like like underhandedly, but now
Mhm.
she's starting to stand up, right? And she's like, just cut the bullshit, Cordelia. What the hell do you want? And then here she is standing up to Xander, and this Willow would never have done that,
No.
6 episodes before. So I really like to see this in her.
But
Absolutely.
also, can we just take a moment and extract whatever sorriness we were feeling for Xander earlier, if that was something you were feeling? Because at this point, he's now crossed the line of like, oh, so your first choice has bailed on you. So you're
Same.
going to the girl that you know has a crush on you, feeling entitled to her
Mhm.
saying yes, right? Like he doesn't even wait for her to say yes. He assumes she's going to say yes and then barrels onwards. And it's that entitlement that he has, as in, like, I'm just entitled to have a girl to take to the prom. And again, in this curriculum that we're building for men like Xander Harris, in addition to classes on how to deal with rejection, can we have classes about how you're not entitled to women? Thank you.
We need a
Yeah.
whole study lesson for actual like cis men to really follow these
If
guys.
you develop the program, like, I think you
Yeah.
should just do
Call
it.
out, please.
Yeah, because I
Beautiful
have all that
insight.
experience.
There you
Like,
go.
I mean,
No,
I would trust you, honestly.
Xander is well aware of what he's doing. At the end of the day, he really does know
mhm.
exactly what the fuck he's doing, and it
Mhm.
sucks because he passes it under a small radar, like sleeve of nothing, to where he can like get by with it. And obviously, the times are a lot different with that. But I'm glad Willow said fuck no because
But
this is
like,
such a vibe.
do you not agree that if Xander were a real person who existed now, he'd be listening to Joe Rogan and he'd be falling for all the incel bullshit
100%.
because he's going to hear these messages that the reason why he can't get a date is because women are woke bitches, and it's just like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, Xander,
Or women don't
and
know what they want.
this is the show opposing the feminism it's supposed to
we
be
need
portraying
that
and putting out there.
counter programming here.
Yeah,
And I just
agreed.
it really bothers me that Xander, maybe not so much anymore because the reckoning came, but up until recently, Xander has always been known in the fandom as the loyal one, the best friend, the guy that you want on your team, even though he doesn't have superpowers. But this episode is showing us more than once that he's actually not a good friend to either Buffy or Willow. And
Right.
it couldn't be more obvious, right? The way that he handled Buffy's rejection, the way he only sees Buffy as a conquest, as somebody who he wants to sleep with and be with, but not as a real person with feelings and her own agency and whoever she likes. And then we go to Willow, who he sees as a backup plan, somebody who definitely has a crush on him that he can manipulate and use to make himself feel as a better man. That's not a friend. That's not a
No.
good person.
No.
And I that's why it bothers me, and that's why we came down so hard on Xander for the last couple of years and on social and everything we said, because look at what he just did to Willow here. That's not a good friend. Is there room for him to grow from here? There is. Will he take it? I
There's
guess
only
we'll
room.
see. There's no well, there's like when you're in hell, there's nowhere to go but up, I suppose. But I like this is not a great episode for Xander. I don't care what he does later.
Honestly, I mean, what I was trying to say, I guess, initially, the fact that he says with her in this moment, he's like, "Oh, I didn't realize," but you do, because, like I said, you know exactly what you're doing. You try to play it under the radar because this is your friend, so you think that they're just going to take you as you are, and it's not that way. Like in the courtyard with Buffy, he said, "I'm sorry" to her, and it's like, "Oh, so you can say sorry, so you should go back to the pack and apologize and tell everybody exactly what you did, and like have that off your
And
chest as
that you
well,
remember.
so that way everybody, like all the things, like no, he knows what he's doing, and it all plays into all that stuff and brings it to a head for me, and I'm just
And
like, I'm glad.
Willow is so smart and so self-aware and mature in this scene, right? She says no right away, and she explains right away like why she's saying no. And like Buffy, she lets him down, fairly gently. She's very direct and she's very clear. But like Willow having a crush on Xander, I can imagine, again, no personal experience at this, but like I can imagine that like it could have been so easy for her to just say yes, as in like, well, like Xander's
Okay.
finally going
Yeah.
take me to the prom or whatever this dance is.
Mhm.
Like, and for her to have that backbone, like you've said, for her to actually recognize that it wouldn't be the outcome that she wants it to be, that takes strength that a lot of 16-year-old girls just aren't going to have. And as you said, Steph, it's that sign of what is to come with Willow's character, where she's not just being a doormat, but also like Willow has a lot of emotional intelligence for somebody her age. And that's really important because, you know, as the show goes on, Willow is Buffy's best friend. She's the confidant. And it's really important that Buffy has another female friend to talk to about boy stuff, but also just like about that tension between being the slayer and dealing with everyday life. And for Willow to stand up to Xander in this moment and say, like, I know what you're doing, Xander, and it's not going to work.
Mhm.
I just, I want to applaud her. Like,
Someone
well
needed to
done.
put him in his place, and I'm
Yeah.
glad it was Willow because now we can hope in the future he'll act accordingly, but he probably will not. He'll disappoint us again, I'm sure. Tell
Yeah,
me
he
that
was already over for me at the pack. I was like, I don't know if he can recover from this. And he started to a little bit, but then now I'm like, no, Xander's just Xander, and I don't like him really.
when we
Enjoy
watch
enjoy that roller coaster. It's gonna go for another 6
Oh,
seasons.
shit.
when we watched the first episode together, I asked her something and Courtney responded like she thought that Xander was going to be the character that grew on her the most. And literally within a few episodes, she's like, "Why is this guy like fuck ass? Like, what's happening with him?"
Yeah, I retract
But
that. I Uno reverse on that statement.
But you don't know better, right? It's okay.
At first, you wanna have high hopes for everybody,
Yeah,
and
you
I'm that
do.
kind of person. I want to love the underdog. That's kind of like the name of my game. So it was like, yeah, I really want to love this guy, but now I just feel like I don't even want to have the expectation there.
Well, I think you've nailed really the whole arc of Xander's character, not in the show, but in society, right? Because we're supposed to root for him. He is an underdog, right?
Yeah.
There are moments that you're gonna come across that have already happened in season 1 where you do root for him. You could, right? Not everyone's 100% evil or awful, but
Well, do you think it's more of a universal do you think other people have the perspective that we have, or do you think there are people out there who hone in on feeling more sorry and sympathetic toward
there are.
Xander, because I feel like there's that element of it too, where people can be watching it and totally miss all the points that we just made about how he basically is emotionally manipulative, and now he's trying to like cushion his own blow
That's
by
why we exist.
yeah.
dismissing Willow and like,
No,
Xander
you
slam.
you're
and I just
right.
feel like I don't know, it was just to me it was very clear, and I'm glad you guys are all on that same wavelength and page, but it is kind of interesting to beg the question, I guess, if there's people out there that only hone in on, I guess, having sympathy towards Xander.
We literally get so let me describe the 3 types of email that we get. One, we get people defending Xander, especially when Steph posts Xander slander TikToks, and they have to write in or comment on the TikTok and explain why we're wrong.
Yeah.
2, we get people agreeing with us and saying, you're so right about Xander. Or, they say, well, we disagree, but like we're really enjoying listening to your Xander slander because it's a different point of view. And then they usually link us to like somebody else slandering Xander, and we're like, thanks, but we know. And then somebody else
Yeah.
posted a really long video essay about Xander Harrison, why he's terrible.
I'm gonna have to go watch
It's
that.
like an hour long. It's an
And
hour
I was
long.
I'll
joking.
watch
I
it
was
over and
joking
over.
with Steph that we've been saying this for 4 years now, but it's only official when a man says it. So,
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
but
Yeah.
the third type we get are people who email us and say, when I originally watched this show, I loved Xander Harris, and it's only after listening to your podcast that I've actually started to recognize how problematic he is, and it's changing my opinion of him. When we hear that our podcast is changing hearts and minds, like
Yeah.
and we don't ever expect people to completely agree with our takes on things. We love it when people disagree respectfully. That's part of the fun of having this discourse, right? But when it comes to somebody like Xander Harris, you know, I appreciate that there are people who are listening with an open mind and realizing that this portrayal of a teenage boy from 25 years ago is so easy to write off as, "Oh, he's just a teenage boy, right? He's just full of
Mhm.
hormones, and,
Like,
a lot of teenage boys can, like, see themselves in this." But it's like, that's the
That's the
problem?
problem.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
like, it reminds me of Gordo from Lizzie McGuire, where,
ooh,
Yes.
like,
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
he's the
yeah.
nice guy, right? And the problem in our society, well, one of the many problems is that, in patriarchy, these so-called nice guys get told that they will always finish last, but that the reason is women and not patriarchy.
Mhm.
And that's the problem, right? So to see Xander Harris as a good person and a nice guy and a good representation of that, and not think critically about how the show, at this point at least, never really stops and challenges him to do better. And this is what we come down on in our podcast as kind of our verdict on Xander is, for whatever growth he might experience and however much we might feel sympathy for him, because I mean, he goes through things in
Sure.
this series
We
too.
have episodes we like. We wouldn't want him
Yeah.
not on the show, I feel like, no matter
Yeah.
what. Like, I still want Xander to have
And
a place.
he's not the worst character in the series. But like, for all of those things, our major complaint about Xander is just he seldom, if ever, faces consequences for his bad behavior.
Comments.
Partly because he's a Joss Whedon self-insert. And that is
He
the
is.
real difficult thing about Xander's character in this series.
And it's partly also because they don't see his behavior as problematic. And if they do, it is written off, right? It's like we're not going to address
We're
it.
conditioned to believe it's normal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so normalized for a teenage boy of his age, and people are just like, "Oh, that's why we forgive it." And as Cara said, that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
So we will critique it. And I'm sure you guys are too, and you will as you move forward because we see it now more than ever, and it's worth calling out because this show is still relevant today.
Yeah.
Well, that's enough on Xander for this now. We'll praise him in about 20 minutes. That evening in the locker room, Buffy is rifling through her locker and I guess having changed for the night, grabs a stake out and turns around as other students pass by leaving from what looks to be a soccer practice. Buffy is always just out here with her weapons. Like, she just turns around from the damn locker and she's holding the stake as these people, like, she just doesn't care anymore. She's dropping shit like that Giles lets her borrow all in the school hallways and people take notice to it and all this. It just like trips me out every time I see it. And also, where's Snyder this episode to be like, why are you still at school after hours? Like, what the fuck's happening? Get the fuck out of here. Go home. Smoke a blunt.
Again, as a Canadian watching an American TV show, I'm just assuming this is an ordinary portrayal of America. Like, don't you all always have weapons out everywhere?
Buffy does, but like, where's the security guards nowadays? That's not how it
Fair
is. Like,
analysis.
you have to go through like some high schools around here. You have to go through like a metal detector before you enter school for your school day.
Yes,
Just because, like,
hence why
My
you bring
son-
the
obviously
pointy wood
reasons
stake.
now.
Yeah.
Like,
The
Yeah,
stake
my
makes
kid
sense.
totally. My kid is in 6th grade and has to go through a metal detector to get into school.
does he
and I
really?
just
Okay,
find
no,
that-
I'm not gonna-
Yeah, totally. Like he takes a laptop to school and he has to like hold it up above the metal detector so he can go through. And I'm just
That
like,
is
what is
so
this? They're
sad.
11.
That's really,
Calm
really
down.
terrible.
But you have freedom, Courtney. Don't you ever
Yeah.
forget.
Oh, listen, again, I'm from Europe, so I knew this whole thing was an illusion. It was my mom that was confused. I was like, wait, you're going to be so unhappy.
Oh.
Well, since Buffy has her awesome steak now, she moves over to the sink with it to freshen up. She turns on the water and is looking at herself in the mirror. When she looks down back at the water, it's visibly blood pouring out of the faucet. Our next shot is then her opening the library door on a mission, saying under her breath, "Giles, you are not going to believe this." She can hear him talking in his office and stops in her tracks, overhearing Giles say, "It's clear it's what's going to happen. It's happening now." She can see Angel in the room holding a book and smiles, whispering his name. Mind you, it's been a whole 5 episodes, nearly half the season since we've seen this motherfucker. And she's just so happy that he's here. Her eyes lit up, and Sarah does this. Their chemistry is like the most beautiful thing you'll ever see in a love story. And just this is like the first taste back of it because they made this agreement pre-contextually, and then it also came up in Out of Mind, Out of Sight, where Angel was telling Giles that, like, listen, we made this agreement to kind of put some space in between it. I've been further like putting that boundary up to make sure I can't be around her, and now he's there behind the scenes with Giles.
It's almost like Angel is a male love interest for Buffy, who, despite things like an age gap, actually respects her boundaries and her agency and cares for what's best for her.
He's had time to change and be more introspective on his life, especially on his journey towards his redemption at this point. That's starting to open up because obviously Buffy is his redemption. Like this whole storyline, this whole season is what leads to everything else that's to come. And we'll find that out obviously as we get there. But Buffy and Angel forever.
And what a body.
Yeah. I told Courtney and Angel the fact that whenever he took his shirt off in the room for her to bandage him up, little prepubescent 13-year-old me or 12-year-old me was like pausing the TV screen and just staring. Like, God, this is so creepy. Do I like men?
I was about to say, did you know at this point, Brandon, or was this
Of course.
like part of your awakening?
No, I definitely knew what type of guys I liked. Tall, skinny, dead-looking motherfuckers were going to be my vibe.
Vampires.
Vampires. But no, I think this is what's so, like, it sealed the fate for me watching Angel take off his shirt in this series.
I love that for you.
But we hear him in there say, "It can't be. You've got to be wrong." She starts to move toward the room, but pauses at the doorframe just out of sight as Giles says that he's checked it numerous times and it's very real. Angel stating that there's got to be some way around it, and Giles proclaiming that some prophecies can be mutable. Buffy has thwarted some, but the Codex, everything within it, comes to pass. Angel claims that he's reading it wrong, and Giles yells,
"I wish to God I were. But it's very plain. Tomorrow night, Buffy will face the Master, and she will die."
Closing in on Buffy's face, frozen having heard this. We fade to black for an imaginary commercial break. And then when we fade right back in, she's still standing there. Angel goes on to ask if he's verified the text, and Buffy just lets out a laugh, letting her presence be known. Courtney laughed with her. She was like, "Oh shit, this bitch about to be delusional as fuck."
This is what happens when you drop Eves.
Literally, you might hear things you don't want to hear, or like have a spur of the moment. Like, I'm not good with spotting 80, so I know that this bitch is not having a good time with it, especially being in a sign that I can't say right now because Courtney does not know her zodiac sign. We're big astrology people, so I told like her that they talked about it in *iRobot You, Jane*, but they got the computer stuff all wrong. I told her it's season 4. She asked me in like episode 2 or 3 what zodiac sign is Buffy, and I was like, I can't tell you because you gotta just wait to figure it out.
Do you have a guess, Courtney?
She thinks you said an Aries, right?
I did, but I don't know if that's like ingrained like prematurely, because isn't Sarah Michelle Gellar an Aries like in reality? Yeah, so I think maybe that's just like there in the forefront of things. So I don't know, maybe I can't see it clearly.
She laughing, letting her presence be known. She walks out into the open room. They follow her out there. She stopped laughing and is now taking big gulps. Light tears forming already in her eyes, she turns around to them and shrugs, stating,
So that's it, huh? I remember the drill. One Slayer dies, next one's called.
her voice starting to crack. She wonders who she is. Meeting eyes with a pained Giles, asking him if he will train her or if they will send someone else. Buffy, he starts, but she cuts him off asking, does it say how he's going to kill me? Bigger tears now dropping across her cheeks. She whimpers out, do you think it'll hurt? Every time I hear that part, I'm just like, oh my God, you poor girl. Like, you just got told you're going to die. And we don't know that there's 6 other seasons of Buffy at this point. So everybody watching this for the first time, we're like, oh my God. And then her emotional range in this, we'll get into it. But she looks over to Angel, who is taking steps over to her, and she dodges him, screaming out not to touch her. Wiping away her tears, she looks at Giles again, asking if he was going to tell her. Him offering that he was hoping that he wouldn't have to, that there would be some way around it. She sniffles, stating that I've got a way around it. I quit. It's not that simple, Angel interjects. I'm making it that simple, she yells at him, again stating that she quits, she resigns, she's fired. You can find somebody else to stop the Master from taking over. Giles telling her that he's not sure that anyone else can. All the signs indicate, and she becomes enraged. The signs, looking over to the table pillared with books at her side, grabbing them and throwing them one after another at him, hitting the walls next to him as they fall by his feet, screaming at him with more tears pouring out.
Read me the signs! Tell me my fortune! You're so useful sitting here with all of your books! You're really a lot of help!
He looks down in shame, supposing that he is not in fact any help, and Angel tries to tell her he knows this is hard. She looks to him scoffing. What does he know about this? He's never going to die. You think I want anything to happen to you, do you? That I could stand it? They just got to figure out a way. And she cuts him off to say again, she's found that way. She quits. Remember, he needs to pay the fuck attention. She's like screaming at his ass. I was like, oh my God, get him, Buffy. Giles looks to her saying, Buffy, if the Master rises, and she cuts him off. I don't care, she screams, ripping off her cross necklace that Angel gave her. She grows solemn, stating calmly again, I don't care. She bows her head and then looks back up through her brows at her watcher to say to him with a shaken voice,
Giles, I'm 16 years old. I don't want to die.
She tosses her necklace to the ground, walks by the two, and leaves the library.
That should get an Emmy.
An Emmy, and poor bitch never gets one. I'm like, but this scene is one of the heaviest in the whole episode, obviously. Even rewatching it last night, I've seen this so many times, and I got the gulps. Like, my whole body started to tense up, and I'm like looking at Courtney. Oh my God, are you going to cry?
Well, and Sarah Michelle Gellar is such a powerhouse. Like, this is the moment that really reveals her acting chops. Up until this point, it's been wisecracking and the dynamics in scenes with other people. But like, she has to carry this monologue. And, she's not 16, but she's still a very young actor. And this is the moment where she really, really shows off what she can do with her emotional range, because her emotions go all over the place in this scene. She starts off with the denial, the laughter, and then you see her like tearing up, and then you see her getting angry. And the choice, and I don't know if this was direction from Joss or if this was, something that she worked out with Tony, but like the way that she throws the books at him to emphasize things, and she's like getting so viscerally upset. It's incredibly powerful.
She had to go take a seat afterwards, I bet. Like any other times, like there's a few other scenes across the series where she like.
Well, the number of takes they must have done.
She nails it every time, and it hits us right in our guts every single time we watch it.
Yeah, but also like when you dig into the content of the speech and the fact that this is Buffy truly realizing for the first time, the tragedy of the Slayer is you don't get out of it alive. Like, she has the powers of a superhero, but whereas a superhero has the burden of their powers and their secret identity, they also have that promise of, well, you can keep going on. For Buffy, she doesn't get to stop being the Slayer unless she dies. And there's an expectation that it's going to happen soon. It's going to happen when you're young. And that's a terrible burden to have as a young woman, just that awareness. It's cruel.
What I had to say about it is almost like a really like neck and neck with you. I wrote about her just having the reality of her Slayer status thrown in her face. Before this, she just thought obviously casually she was elected as this duty and she was going to coast through it. But now she has the hardships with it and been through some gnarly stuff already, and it's led to this. But she knows the drill. One Slayer dies, next one's called, as she quotes. The way she shrugs it off at first, being in denial, we get all stages of grief right after that, except the last one, because that comes at the end of the episode, or with her scene with Willow essentially. But 1 through 4 are covered here. We get anger when she throws the books at Giles, like you said, and lashes out. Bargaining, where she says she quits and somebody else can do the job for her, which she did in episode 1 with Giles. She's like, you to kill him. You know what I mean? She's already trying to push off that duty. And then obviously depression happens whenever she's saying she's just a teenage girl and she doesn't want to die. Sarah Michelle Gellar does this so brilliantly. And there's not many actors that can hold a flame to her performances on the series and emotional range, because she's conveyed this amazingly to us. We feel for her in this moment. We feel like we're that 16-year-old girl going through this. And it's nice to, not nice to feel sad and like our reactions to this, because it's an awful feeling. But at the same time, we like, she envelops us and like has us feel for her and like really feel for Buffy and her character.
Well, and also just like you mentioned, the fact that there is a tension here of, will she actually die? Because Buffy was a mid-season replacement. That's why season 1 only has 12 episodes. There was no guarantee that it would ever get a second season. It just happened to do really well. So like, credit to Joss Whedon for writing the episode the way that he did, because they really, really play it up well in terms of tension and everything. I appreciate that they take this seriously. So often in apocalyptic moments in TV shows like this, it's always just like, well, the characters are going to get out of it, right? And there's really no drama associated with it. And the weight of that burden of I'm going into mortal peril is often treated very lightly in TV shows like this. And we do teenagers a disservice when we do that, because we don't teach teenagers about mortality very well, I think. And that's why you get a character like Buffy who's 16 and at the start of the season, she's very blasé about it, because nobody who's 16 wants to think about their own death, right? You're so young. And the only thing I can really compare it to is it's reminding me of a child or a teenager who has a terminal illness like cancer, and how they're often compared to being heroic, right? They're like, oh, you're such a hero, you're battling, you're a survivor, like whatever. And meanwhile, they are forced to confront their mortality far, far sooner than we tend to require of children.
Yeah.
And it really, really alters your perspective on things. And that's what we're seeing with Buffy here is she's being forced to confront her own mortality. Nobody's prepared her for this. Nobody in our society prepares you for that when you're that age. And it's really tough.
I think there's a brilliance and a nuance to this scene that is touching on what you're talking about, Cara. It's the fact that she's having this meltdown and this coming to terms, or I guess like the beginning of finding out her destiny with Giles and Angel. Because earlier in the episode, we dealt with the high school part of everything with Xander and Willow, right? Everything that they're up to right now is very centered in high school and being young. And it's that more reality based conflict that we're getting from that. But now we're dealing with life and death. We're dealing with the supernatural, a prophecy, Buffy being a vampire slayer. So I really like that they had this happen with the vampire and the Watcher, who are the two men in her life right now that represent that more adult side of what she's going to be facing over the next 7 years. So when we think about Buffy, she's coming to terms with the fact that she is going to die. Thank God she's having this conversation at Giles and Angel, who are, more mature, arguably, but they're the adults here. And they're the ones that she should be spewing the stuff at. Like, it wouldn't have been right if it was Joyce or Willow or Xander. I really like that it's these two guys that are here to take the burden of what she's yelling at them for,
Yeah. I didn't even think about it that way, like who her audience was whenever this happened. It's just like it's there for us, but that is like really nice to point out, honestly.
Yeah, that is a good point. I never really even thought about that, how different that whole conversation could have gone after she gave her whole speech if that
Yeah.
was two different people in the room.
She
That's
could
a
have
really good
stormed
point.
out and like went and talked to Willow about it instead, or like.
Do you guys think her mom would have been like, let's keep the positive energy flowing?
I mean, I can't comment on that because, I mean, again, just spoilers here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Bless Joyce.
Her mom would just pack up dinner in a bag for her and be like, that's nice.
Yeah.
Dinner in a bag.
Also, now that I watched this episode in 2024, I am forced to think about this song from this obscure pop artist. You might have heard of her, Taylor Swift.
Oh, yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, so she put out one of her albums this year called The Tortured Poets Department, and there's a song on that album called The Prophecy. And you cannot listen to this song and not develop this theory that Taylor is a Buffy fan, because like this song is keyed for Buffy, for the Slayer, right? Like the lyrics, like, please, I've been on my knees, change the prophecy, don't want money, just someone who wants my company, let it once be me. Who do I have to speak to about if they can redo the prophecy? Like, I've seen supercuts on YouTube that take, clips from Buffy and put this music to it, and it matches up so perfectly. The lyrics and the melody and the theme of the song, and just, this scene in this episode is just all about the pain and the anguish of having a destiny. And whether or not that's something that people believe about in real life, it's something that we discuss a lot in our media and our culture and our fiction. This idea of like, if we are destined for greatness, what is the burden there? And whether or not you believe in that, it is true that most of us in our lives end up in a situation where you have a choice to do something great and meaningful at the risk of either your own health, your own successfulness, right? Like, I think about people who go off to war. I think about people who put themselves on the line as first responders, frontline workers, like people who protest, people who are activists. Like, we have chances to embrace that aspect of ourselves, but it can be hard because we know that there are always going to be costs. And that's what this show is asking. The question here in this episode is, when you're told you have a destiny and you know that your destiny will help people, it will save the world, but it's going to come at great personal cost, what do you do? Do you rise to that occasion? And that is the definition of heroism that Buffy is displaying here.
I'm gonna have to go listen to that song now, especially if you said there's like a video out there with like the side by side parallels between the show and like the song itself. I'm like, this be the one Taylor Swift song I like immensely.
The only one.
But speaking of music, the next scene we have Xander in there listening to his cringy ass country music. But in that brief scene, like beginning of that, we get Willow in her bedroom, also kind of just chilling around. She looks at the picture of her and Xander. She tries to give him a call and he doesn't answer it. He just picks up the phone and like hangs it off the hook. Who misses the time when you could just like ignore people infinitely that way just by leaving the phone off the hook instead of just having to put your phone in do not disturb or cut it off or anything like that?
This is what I mean. Like we have Xander and Willow with like their high school drama, which is a big deal when you're in high school, right? But then you got Buffy, who's literally like, my days are
I'm about to
numbered.
die.
Yeah.
Yep. She's about to literally
Right?
die the next day, and all they have to worry about is like going to her funeral and then going on about life.
Yeah.
But Xander has his room to be cleaning that he needs to be worried about though, because his room is like
Yeah.
typical junkie boy. I was looking at it and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot we see Xander's room across the series, and he definitely could get like the Swiffer mop out or something, get a Roomba, all the
But
things.
again, I don't think it's a bad thing at all, though. You know what I mean? Like I there's a big difference between the two situations, of course. But again, the show does not minimize what teenagers go through. You know, that's not the point
That's true.
of showing. That's not why I'm bringing up this parallel. I'm just saying, like, it really sucks to be Buffy because not only is she part of the high school stuff, but high school is hell, literally, where she has to deal with being a slayer on top of all that. But it's not to minimize what is happening emotionally to these young people, because that is why we're watching the show, because we relate to them, right?
Brandon, do you know whose fault it is that Sandra's room is so messy?
I don't know if I should know. I feel on the spot.
It's probably Willow's fault.
It's Buffy's fault.
Buffy's
It's Willow's fault.
Yeah.
It's
Every
everyone
woman's
is,
fault.
of course, exactly. There you go.
Because if Xander had been bringing a woman home, of course he would have cleaned up his room for her, right? But because nobody wants to sleep with him, that's why his room is messy.
I don't think he'd take the time anyways, but no. I'm a clean freak, so I like to clean things. Not Monica Geller freak out, but But I like the parallel that Steph just made too, like to how Buffy's reacting to this. Because in our next scene, we cut to her in her bedroom. We get the overlay of the music playing for us. It's sappy music, a song by Jonathan Brooks called Inconsolable. And she's flipping through that photo book of like her childhood, all that good stuff. And Joyce pops in to check on her and make sure those positive vibes are flowing. Moving the smallest plate of barely eaten food over on her vanity, commenting on such as well. She asks if Buffy feels like talking about what's on her mind. And Buffy turns to face her on her bed while tears are streaming down her face yet again, telling her mom that she wishes that they could go away. Let's just do that for the weekend. And it'd just be the two of them, even offering up that she brings up all the embarrassing old stories that she likes. Joyce obviously reminds her of the fact that she has the gallery, and Buffy sadly asks, Mom, please. Joyce brings up the spring fling being the next night, and Buffy, unenthused, she wonders if no one has asked her out. Buffy tells her someone did, but Joyce finishing her train of thought to say that it wasn't the right someone. No, it absolutely was not, Mom, but that's also not the issue here. I love that Buffy's mom is coming to the room also to talk to her about this. This is like one of the best scenes we get across season 1, and seeing like how she was just so negative on Buffy in the beginning, and now she's in here like actually doing her mom duties. It's nice to see.
We're very hard on her in season 1. But this scene in particular, like you're just saying, is really sweet. And actually, when you look at Joyce and her interactions with Buffy on the whole, she is actually a really good mom. Like she's trying really hard.
Yeah, self-help books, positive vibes flowing. We cover it.
Yeah, changing her strain of weed. Like she's stoned out of her mind most of the time. But like Joyce is, this is a good scene. And I really like that they include it, because in so many TV shows about teenage heroes, the parents are absent or
dismissive.
Dismissive. Like, and here, obviously, Joyce doesn't know about Buffy's secret identity, but she is being supportive of her daughter's high school experience.
Yeah, and she takes notice too that her daughter's sitting up in her room once again, kind of being sulky and upset, obviously, about something. And then also we get the beautiful moments in here where she tells Buffy, like, I got you this thing, and she moves over obviously to her closet and opens up and shows her this beautiful white dress to reveal it to us that it's hanging there on the door. And Buffy commenting obviously on that they can afford that, and she's like makes her little crack about her eating not too much, and they can obviously afford it. Buffy calling the dress beautiful and Joyce saying that she should wear it to the dance. She tells her mom that she can't go to the dance, and Joyce asking why not. Is it written somewhere? You should do what you want. Lets Buffy in on that little story of like her father meeting at the dance with her and all that good stuff. And I wrote in my notes too that Joyce is like a vixen and we see her out here in these streets because she says that her dad went with someone else, and like by the end of the night she was Joyce's man. And I was like, all right, Joyce, roping him in. She's like, I got this
Joyce
shit, but-
belongs
She
to
wrecked
the
that home.
streets. Like Joyce is a savage. We all know that.
Also, is it written somewhere? Oh,
They did that in The Harvest too. She always saying exactly what's happening though. She says, I know if you don't go out, it'll be the end of the world. Everything is life or death when you're a 16-year-old girl. And then here we get the call back to that, because in this episode, she's like, Giles, I'm 16 years old. I don't want to die. And she's like saying the same exact thing. But here we are, Joyce. We love this scene and the dress and the interaction with her mom. And you can tell that she does love her daughter, like you were saying a second ago, Cara, and especially since she spent the money for her re-up this time, because she's over here on a tolerance break because she saved all the money that she needed to buy that next quarter with, so that way she could like afford this dress. Like, that's a whole thing.
Joyce bought the dress for Buffy because she saw what Buffy wore to the bronze at the start of this season. It was like, oh, honey.
A suit.
Her interview outfit. Like, I
Oh my
can't have
God.
you representing the Summers girls like this. Here's a beautiful new gown. Enjoy.
That was funny. Fucking Buffy's mom being a stoner, it kills me literally every single time. I was like, I have to put this in here somewhere, and I was like, it dawned on me when I was writing this out. I was
It's
like,
the legacy
Have
I
you
am
not-
most
have you
proud
not,
of in
like-
this
Great
show.
lie.
Have you not made that connection yet? Like, on
well, I
your-
started to look at it differently because I know this after finishing you guys' podcast.
Yeah, but it's funny because we didn't realize until the same episode we found out her name. That's when we were like, of course, it's because she's so high. Because it was even an Angel when she like literally gets bitten by Darla, and she's like, what was that? Like she like literally.
She doesn't know at all. It drove me so crazy. She's like at the freaking refrigerator, being like, the first thing she's gonna do when she gets there, she's like, well, I just smoked out back. So like, can I offer you something to eat? Because
Look
I'm
how
very,
cute.
very hungry.
It's just once
She's like-
you see it, you can't unsee it,
Yeah.
and like it just retroactively it makes so much sense
She's
for
like,
all
"I'm
of
so
Joyce's choices
stupid."
throughout the seasons.
I fell on a fork.
We should make that a segment, Joyce's Choices.
Well,
We love Joyce. We're Joyce apologists. There are Xander apologists out there. There's apologists for every character. We are Joyce apologists always.
the best stance, the best place to be.
Mm.
Joyce's corner. Always. Because she's got the weed. We're pro cannabis. So we're always for some stoner Joyce. That's why I was laughing so hard along the course of y'all's show. Every single time it got brought up, I'm like, I'm fucking dead with these two. So it's perfect. The next morning, Cordelia and Willow are walking through an empty Sunnydale High. She's speaking on Kevin not showing up to bring all the shit to the bronze the night before like he was supposed to, and how he was a flake, and how she's not upset with him. Obviously, she'd be ready to scold someone, but God forbid, she feels it's cute that he's flaked on her. And that's obviously not her normal vibe. They make it to the classroom and they peek through a glass, seeing the boys in there watching cartoons. And obviously, we can just see from their backside of this, we just assume that that's what's happening. Cordelia calls it cute but not cute and asks Willow why they put up with men. I think that's like basically what Cara's been saying this whole entire episode. But we get a shot of the two of them standing at the door from inside the class, and we can see that all five of them are dead in the room with bite marks on their necks and blood literally smothered everywhere. She opens the door. Kevin just falls out into the hallway at them, and they start freaking out. Willow walks into the room and has that whole moment where she takes in that space and is in pure horror. We cutscene transition magic from the white like flash at the end of that previous scene, and now are taken in with Buffy's white dress in the screen, and we see her in her room trying it on and looking at herself in the mirror. She's now all dolled up, obviously going to go to the prom potentially, spend her last night doing this. I love her look here. This is iconic. She doesn't have her leather jacket on, but her mom comes running in the room and lets her know that there's something on the news that mentions Willow's name being a part of it. And then we flash over to Willow's bedroom. Willow talks about how she's seen so much and how she thought that she could take anything, telling Buffy that she's not okay and how this felt different. She knew these guys and she visits that room every day. It wasn't their world anymore. It was the fact that the vampires had made it theirs. She's crying this to Buffy, saying that the vampires had fun, asking what are they going to do. Buffy tells her what we have to, then stands up and sighs, telling her to promise her that she'll stay in tonight. Then she moves to leave, and Willow calls out her name, telling her with a good smile and the best friend energy you could ever have that she really likes her dress. Buffy looks down at her wardrobe, which has that leather jacket now adorned over top, and she smiles back at Willow and tells her to take care and then leaves. When we got to this part last night watching it, Courtney looks over at me and she's like, I know if you tell me some take care shit, you like something's wrong. She's like, you better take care with me tonight. You're not going out nowhere.
I know that you're
I'm picking
telling
up
me
on
you're
the
going
vibe.
forever. You're going away.
But I love the fact here in this scene we get Buffy taking the time to go over and console Willow. Within this moment, obviously, we get the acceptance of her journey, and she knows that she has to fight for her friends, just like she realized and accepted her responsibility when she found out Jesse was taken in the second episode and how she wanted to help him. That was a big signifier for her that she's like, I have people that I care about and I want to protect them, so I need to go out and do this work. And now it's like reinforcing and bringing it back around full circle for us to know that she's like accepting her role once again, and obviously leaving this room is going to head to the library to get into our next scene. But I like this interaction for them. It's really sad because she's basically in this moment in her mind saying goodbye to her best friend.
So why aren't they canceling the dance? Because 5 students died, right? Discovered by 2 other students, including the May Queen. Just cancel the dance. Do you know what I mean?
Also,
Like,
the
And
library.
there was an earthquake.
there's a
Yeah, the library has
massacre.
serious structural damage,
Yeah.
and nobody should be allowed in that section of the building.
But mind you, the dance is at the Bronze for some reason.
Yeah.
It's definitely not at the school. Nothing ever destroys the Bronze. But yeah, I just want to throw it out there. Said 5 students dead, possibly more. Just cancel the dance.
Huge
Out of
event. No,
respect.
the show must go on.
Right.
Literally. As we move on. Underground, the master fondles his force field, keeping him trapped, muttering a creepy soon. Then gently nudges Colin to exit the lair to go out and do the job that he was meant for. He takes steps up and into the tunnels as the master calls out once more soon. In the library, Giles is placing weapons from his cage on the table, going back and forth with Jenny as she's recapping with him all the info he's filled her in on about the master and how he got trapped down there and the plans to break free from his prison and open up the Hellmouth, which brings the demons, which ends the world. That's the gist of it. Her laughably saying,
Yeah, the part that gets me, though, is where Buffy is the vampire slayer. She's so little.
which I like always love that little part of the scene because I was like, you're not wrong. She's like literally Sarah Michelle Gellar herself is 5'2" in real life. So that's like not much of somebody. That's my height. And I'm like the smallest person. And then you got here kicking ass to like guys that are 6'5", sometimes in full metal plated suits of armor. Like it's a whole thing. Giles asks if she's heard from the monk, Brother Luca, who was sending out those messages, and she says no. He's disappeared now, but he did send out one global message, and then she looked it up in the Bible under Isaiah 11:6, saying, and then he cuts her off to quote that shit from memory. Like he just puts it out there. I was like, damn, Giles is even so like hardcore that he's read the Bible. I thought that was a huge flex that he just had to throw out there because he comes out giving the whole spew about the lamb and all that good stuff, and concluding to say that it was in comparison to the Aurelius prophecy saying that the anointed will lead the slayer into hell, because the prophecy speaking of the child, obviously. And Jenny confirms that Luca seems to think that the anointed will be a kid. Giles concludes that the anointed is in fact dead because Buffy killed him, or at least may well be. Jenny says that they need to warn her, and Giles says that he doesn't intend to tell her at all. And then in fact, he's going to face the master. Buffy, the queen of eavesdropping, calls out from the other side of the room, no, you're not. And she walks to them, so I'm looking for a kid, huh? And he'll lead me to the master? He tells her that he's not going to send her out there to die. She tells him that's definitely not what's happening. He tells her that he's made up his mind, and she reverse cards back to him. He scolds her, saying that he made up his mind first, and that he's older and wiser, and just needs to do what she's told for once. And then he like backs it up. He's like, all right, like, are you good with that? Like he questioned himself for a second in that scolding. He should have just been more forceful. But she shakes her head at him, telling him that that's not how it goes. She's the slayer. He tells her that he's defying what the books say. Now he is going, and there's nothing that she can do that will change his mind. She agrees and then sends a punch right to his head, knocking him out. Jenny rushes over to Giles. Buffy grabs her cross necklace off the desk and puts it around her neck, looking down at Jenny, holding Rupert's head, saying,
When he wakes up, tell him... I don't know. Think of something cool. Tell him I said it.
Buffy goes to grab the crossbow off the table, Jenny telling her that if she fights the master, she will die. And Buffy just says, maybe, but I might also take him with me. And then she goes to leave to fight the master. The fourth time Giles also has been punched out in the series, this time with Buffy doing it herself.
Yeah, Giles needs to go to the hospital and get that checked out.
Most likely.
Also,
Yeah.
because it happened on school property, he has to fill out a lot of forms.
Well, Buffy exits the front of Sunnydale High's entrance, and 10 seconds later, the Anointed calls out to her, standing on the grass, simply, "Help me." She looks over at him, walking over, saying, "It's okay, I know who you are." And he extends out his hand for her. She grabs it, and the two walk off together. I wrote that she should have staked this motherfucker right on sight. Courtney, in the moment, looked at him. She's like, shoot him with the crossbow. Like, I was like, dust his ass right now.
That poor Colin was pissed off that Buffy came so readily, because it seems like he had a whole bit worked out where he's like,
Yeah.
okay, like what else has he been doing down in the Master's Gate? He must have
Exactly.
He
been
was supposed to
planning
convince
this.
her. He was supposed to persuade her. And
And
she was
she
like, yeah,
just
I'm coming.
Yeah, she just completely torpedoes that, and he must have been so pissed off because that was his one job.
Right? Like, wasn't he on the bus with his mom somewhere when he got
Yep.
taken? He was like, this is what you took me for?
He's like, this is my moment. And you're just like,
And it's written in a book somewhere, and this is all he gets.
Right?
He leads her down there, and then he just,
We'll see.
where does he go?
And then
for
imagine
Colin.
his surprise, because this whole time the Master's been getting so pissed off because he's just been sending like vampire after vamp up there, and no one returns because Buffy slays them all. So of course, poor Colin's like, "Damn, I'm really gonna have to convince this bitch to come with me. Like, I'm gonna need an Oscar award
He
for
did so
my
much.
performance." And then he says one word, and she's like, "All right."
That works for me. Well, that's what we love Buffy for, right? She's like, I don't have time for your shit. Let's just go do it.
In the library, Willow and Xander have met up with Ginny and a now conscious Giles. Xander is slipping out over the fill-in that they've received on the events and the prophecy, Willow voicing that she's noticed something was wrong with her when she was at her place. This whole scenario has them freaked out, but Giles tries to assure them that calm is the way to be at the Momes. Xander isn't about that life. Stressed out more so, he begins to scold Giles about letting her go off to fight the Master. And here we get the best quote when he's like,
As the soon-to-be purple area on my jaw will attest, I did not let her go.
Willow wonders how they can help her, and Ginny brings it back up and into their awareness that they also have the apocalypse to be worrying about. Xander doesn't give a fuck. He just wants to worry about Buffy. Willow following it up, questioning, why is Ginny even here in the mix?
Hey, once the Master gets free, the Hellmouth opens, the demons come to party, and everybody dies.
Xander still doesn't give a fuck, and he goes to say that his focus is on helping Buffy. Giles saying that they don't even know where she is, and Xander, having a thought, says no, but he can find out, leaving the library to go do as such. That shit was killing me, because I'm like, Xander, how do you know where this motherfucker lives? Like, there ain't no way in hell. It's just plot convenience-wise. He knows exactly how to get to Angel, as we know that's where he's going, but...
Maybe there was an anointed one to bring him to Angel.
That's exactly what happens. It's been written about in a book somewhere on Opposite Day. We get that quick glimpse, too, of underground as Colin is leading Buffy along. He brings her to the tunnel that connects to the Master's lair, and she steps up into it, continuing forward. And I love the triumphant music that's playing there. It's like... I'm a big music fan, so I love the fact that the theatrics that they had going there. It's like pause and slowly bringing you into it. Honestly, I feel like Sarah right now from becoming Buffy, because she like gets intrinsic about music. But I've done that the whole series and talked to Courtney about the music scores and stuff, and like how it plays for the whole tone of the show, obviously.
Also, like 100%, the Master is actually playing that music. Like, it's not.
Yeah, he's
just
on the
for us.
organ.
Yeah, he's got somebody's down there doing that. So
It's Colin.
it's Colin as well.
He's like, "Hurry up and take your seat so you can play this music before
Yeah.
Buffy enters all the way."
Well,
Keep the organ right by the entrance of the tunnel so I can get to it right away.
Sit down at your organ.
Exactly. Well, apparently the anointed one for Xander has led him over to Angel's apartment. We arrive there. Banging on his door is occurring, and he opens it to find Xander there, displeased with his presence as Xander invites himself inside, because he can do that, telling him of the fact Buffy has vanished to go fight the Master. Angel stating that he will kill her, Xander agreeing that he's heard that rumor, stating to Angel that they aren't going to let that happen. Angel asks that what he proposes as option, Xander saying Angel could help him find the layer underground, and him replying Xander's way out of his league. The Master would kill him surely. With Angel not sounding on board, Xander brings across to his face saying he needs to state clearly that he does not like him. At the end of the day, he's just a vampire, backing Angel into a chair, which he falls into, going on to say about how Buffy thinks that he's everything. She's got this big old yin for him, and thinking that he's a real person, and how he needs Angel to prove her right in this moment. Angel remarking that Xander is in love with Buffy, and Xander just says back to him, "Aren't you?"
Steph, you look like you have thoughts.
No, I just forget how annoying
He's bored.
Xander is. um, it's hard. So I remember when we covered this episode, I was like, why is Angel just at home watching TV? Like, shouldn't he be out doing something? But then I remember this time around, I'm like, oh no, it's because he made a vow that he was going to stay out of Buffy's business. Like, he was like, I don't want to get involved. That's not, it's not my place to step in. But then he's like, I guess we could call him his like romantic love, like rival. Which is really sad that it's Xander, but it is. And he's coming in here. He's like, I'm gonna go save Buffy. Are you? So he's like, God damn it, I guess I have to. It'll look stupid if I don't. So yeah, that was my thinking just now. I was like, Angel wanted to stay out of this one. He was like, it's not my business. This is between Buffy and Giles, is what he was thinking. But Xander has inserted himself once again, and Angel's like, I guess I should go with you.
I think we're supposed to see Xander as heroic based on this, and then of course what happens at the end of the episode.
It wasn't heroic to me. I just appreciated the straightforward attitude because we went from Xander being like a low-key emotional manipulator who didn't want to be clear on what he was feeling to all of a sudden like arriving at Angel's of all people's house, and he's like bearing a cross. He's ready to go. Now he's extra confrontational. And I'm like, where is this energy? You couldn't just been straightforward with Buffy since day one, not been a dick to Willow, not been a complete like borderline rapist in the pack. Like, all these questions are coming up now. So I'm just like, okay, but you do have this energy to channel where you can bring your self-awareness to the table intact with the action and follow through on both, So I was like, it's a side of him I haven't seen. It's just not properly conveyed because, of course, like Brandon said, in reality, Angel would have been like, you're dead.
Courtney, how did you get Xander's therapist's notes?
Yeah.
I am his therapist.
Oh God, hope you're getting paid.
Extensively. They have a lot of sessions multiple times a week. Still to this day. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Back in the library, Giles is telling Jenny more of the Master and how there's no telling how powerful he'll be once he gets out of there. Jenny bringing up a question worth pondering, so the Hellmouth opens. If it's underground and right where he is, the big answer lies in, where's that going to open at? Good point, Giles replies, giving her some books to search through, calling out to a zoned out Willow, giving her the task to search for places of incident to help potentially square them in. We've arrived at the end of the tunnel now with Buffy. Seeing now the candlelit space before us. I made a joke in the last episodes that every day that Darla's been dead, the Master has lit another candle.
And the question that we asked in our podcast was, where are they getting all these candles from?
They're making them. They're candle makers. That's what they're doing down there all day.
Well, thank
that's
you.
What
yes,
Colin's up to.
I posed this question last night, and I was watching this episode. There was a friend with me, and I asked this question. And she's like, "Oh, maybe they render it from the flesh of their victims."
Oh God.
Oh God.
All right.
That was my reaction. Yes, but I'm like, I'm going to take that and I'm going to mention it, and it's going to make me seem smart.
I liked this moment too. Courtney immediately, once Colin went walk away from her, she was like, "Oh my God, I'm scared." Like I saw her whole body tense up and shit, and I was like, "Oh my God, yes, you're feeling the feelings." I was like, "Oh, I love that you're feeling this." But we arrived at that tunnel, and Colin gestures for her that this is it, and he turns away and walks away, fulfilling his prophetic duty, his boring one that y'all have commented on. It's done. It's out of here. He can leave the show now. She watches him leave her, and then we get our iconic shot of Buffy standing there wielding that crossbow, pausing briefly before turning around towards the entrance and moving into it. She steps down the sanded staircase, passing by the blood pool on the ground floor, looking around, taking in the space. "Welcome," the Master calls out in an echoey voice, not letting us know where his position is. "Thanks for having me," Buffy says to the room, him stepping out from the shadows somewhere out of sight. She comments on how he ought to speak with the contractor as the water drips from the ceiling, notating that there's a lot of water damage in here that he's taken. I was like, oh shit. And of course he comments on that feeble banter portion of the fight and snarks at her in that way. Why don't we just cut to and then his words are stopped when she spins around, aiming that crossbow, shooting it directly where she senses location to be, the bolt being halted by his hand quickly just before it smacks him directly at heart center. Courtney went on this whole tangent about her and Angel where she's shooting the fucking bolt everywhere and missing Angel every 2 seconds and it gets knocked out of her hands. She's like, she does not know how to shoot it all because she did not use it well at all. That was her big crossbow episode. And in this episode, whenever he spun around, I looked at her and I was like, what do you think about that crossbow skill now? Good. He just stopped that shit from hitting. Like, she was on point. I guess listening to Marcy be invisible somewhere really helped her hone in on that type of shit.
I also said she should have aimed it directly at his eye, so that way she could have followed it up with, "You've got something in your eye."
I'm generally a big fan of the Master. I think that he's a lovely villain. He's so camp. The acting is great. However, I will say, without going into spoilers, that subsequent villains in the Buffyverse are much more respectful of the banter. They respect Buffy as their opposition in terms of allowing her to banter with them. And I'm not here for the Master's just overt dismissal of Buffy as this little girl, and he's not even going to banter with her. Like, that's
Mhm.
just rude. You're allowed to be evil and kill people and suck their blood, but don't be rude.
But he says that he wants this moment to last. Well, then banter with her, like hype her up, like
Right.
give her the moment, like you're
Yeah.
saying, because you're not wrong.
If the banter portion of the night is feeble, that's on you, buddy. Buffy's bringing her A game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Down in the tunnels, we obviously get that little scene too between Angel and Xander as he's honing in on where she may be. And Xander makes that dumbass remark where he's like, "Quit looking at my neck." And I'm like, you literally sound so stupid. I watched this time around specifically when I was developing the script and writing my notes and all the things. I like just eyed the TV because I was like, I've got to see if he even glances towards it. Of course he did not. And Xander's just being a freaking paranoid.
I read it as homoerotic subtext where he's like a teenage girl who's like, "Don't look at my ass." Like, you're looking at my ass.
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Like, no, they really weren't. But you pull that skirt down if that makes you feel better. Like,
Xander always believes that vampires want to eat him, and they never do. Like, I can't recall one that's
Harmony.
actually gone for it, you know?
There's one, but if you really think about it, you know who she is.
Mm.
In a way, think of a slap fight too. That's the only time we see it, though. Either way, trust and believe, though, Xander, none of us ever are looking at your neck.
You're not the one, Xander. Sorry.
Not even for the vamps.
The Master tells Buffy that she will not kill him with that thing, her retorting that he shouldn't be so sure. She finishes reloading a new bolt in the chamber to look up and see that he's disappeared, his haunting echo voice calling out again that she doesn't understand her part in all of this. She is not the hunter, she is the lamb. As we fade back to the library where Giles is sitting with Ginny, pondering that vampires have been gathering, knowing the Master is coming and how they'll be his army. Ginny asks if he thinks that they'll gather at the Hellmouth, Willow joining them to state that the last time the Master tried to rise was before the harvest, helping them to clue in on the fact that this might be going down at the Bronze. And then they all come to the big conclusion of like, oh shit, the prom, we got to get the fuck out of here and head there. So obviously Ginny and Willow go to do as such, saying that they can take Ginny's car to go do. And Giles obviously calling out to them as well to say that he'll stay there to concentrate on the demon killing and that they should stick together and be careful. But like real talk though, we talked about it a little bit earlier, I guess I'll point it out now too, the prom being at the Bronze. Like, does this town not have any formal venues? I know the school is obviously out, but like most proms and things are held in like a school's gymnasium. My biggest argument right here, and why I have to bring it up because I didn't say it earlier, the Bronze is but so big. How is a whole school body, especially of juniors and seniors, coming together for a fucking school dance event in the Bronze?
So the gym had structural damage from the earthquake, so they had to move it quickly. That's why Cordy was freaking out. Also, the Bronze has really good baking. Have you not noticed this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Buffy loves a buttery croissant.
Oh. Muffins on a plate. There's lots of things to do at the Bronze.
Eat if you're Buffy. And then dance, because Buffy's a good dancer.
The Bronze is owned by one of the parents on the PTA, and this is their condition for like donating something. Although you can't use their sound system. That's out.
Yeah, you can't use it. You gotta have Willow. We're back to Buffy pacing around the lair, searching for the Master, passing bones of old corpses. She calls out to the room about how for someone all-powerful, he sure loves to play hide and seek. He ominously calls back to her that he's waiting for her and how he wants this moment to last, but we discredited that a moment ago. She mutters under her breath, well, I don't, and he appears behind her to say that he understands, throwing her off guard. She spins around to face him and smacks her crossbow to the ground and grabs her by the throat. Out in the parking lot, moving to Ginny's car, Willow asks, what if they get to the Bronze before they do? Ginny, giving them a halt, looks up to notice, well, there are 36 vampires, because I counted them in total this time we're watching around. There are 36 approaching them. That's a shit ton of vampires to be like coming towards the school. And she says, don't worry about that, because they're not going to the Bronze. They turn to me back into the school, but more vampires have appeared behind them.
Something that's really lovely about season 1 is that the enemy, the bad guys, the big bad, they're vampires, right? Because that's not always going to be the case. It's just really great. That is the villain. These are the things that Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, has to face in the last episode of season 1. And I think that this one shot of all the 36 vampires that are like in the field that you counted, with the car and them looking up and they're walking toward the school. This is not a common shot for this show. This shot is very much centered on this episode for this villain for this particular time. It's just not common to see ominous vampires approaching in this giant group where it's actually a huge threat. It's like, oh, they're coming here. Like, this is like a horror movie visual to me. And obviously it's great for the show and it works really well for this episode, but it's not very common. Like, we got to enjoy it drinking in, because this is like straight almost out of the Buffy movie to me. Now that I've watched the series and I look back, I'm like, this actual vision, it's cool to see, and it's not as common as you might think on a show like this.
I agree, honestly. I didn't even think about the fact like that does mirror a lot from that. We have the mirroring images of the outfit that Kristy Swanson, she wears the same leather jacket and like white dress to the event, and obviously it takes place at the school and all of that stuff wrapped up. It's very like much the way of regurgitating and giving the nods to the original movie. It's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Down in the lair, Buffy breaks free of the Master's hand, trying to take off when he reaches out his hand, channeling a sense of thrall to mystically stop her. Frozen by his ability, he moves over to her, stepping behind her, taking off her jacket and dropping it to the floor. He pulls her body into his, commenting,
You tried. It was noble of you. You heard the prophecy that I was about to break free, and you came to stop me. But prophecies are tricky creatures. They don't tell you everything.
He leans his head down to her ear to whisper as we watch her face in horror as he continues to her.
You're the one that sets me free. If you hadn't come, I couldn't go.
A single tear falls down her cheek, and he concludes,
Think about that.
more tears starting to stream down her. He bites into her neck and drinks a bit. Before feeling a surge, he stops, screaming out, "Oh God, the power." Knowing that this is enough, he drops her and she collapses to her knees, exhaling, him saying to her as she falls face forward into the pool of water on the floor,
And by the way, I like your dress.
It's like, wow, everybody's got to comment on how pretty she is because she's our Slayer and she's awesome. He moves away from her to the barrier, having held him captive for 60 years, reaches out his hand to feel its ripple. Honing in on its energy, he plunges the hand forward as bright light emanates and a hole is punched through, collapsing the mystical barrier once and for all, sending out major flashes of light within this action. He walks up and out of the lair. When me and Courtney watched this last night, we got into a little bit of a brief discussion on vampire hypnosis, and I thought it would be cool to speak on this and then a little bit of the master. What I found about thrall or hypnosis with the vampires mentions a little bit of metaphor, and the show obviously has like huge metaphor points, so I found this little clip to read out to you guys. In popular culture, vampires are often depicted as powerful beings capable of hypnotizing the victims with a single glance. First coined by Bram Stoker's depiction of Dracula, the idea of vampires using hypnosis to control their prey is a compelling narrative device. The concept of a vampire hypnosis serves as a metaphor for the allure and manipulation exerted by predatory individuals in real life. So I thought that paired really nice with the show. In vampire literature and media, hypnosis is often used to symbolize the psychological power dynamics between vampires and their victims, highlighting themes of control, seduction, and vulnerability. Also to be called thrall, which is the state of being in someone's power or having great power over someone. And this obviously remains a timeless motif in popular culture for vampires, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about it, and I'm glad, like, even me and Courtney had that whole moment last night. I was like, okay, good, so my thing will make sense in there, because she was questioning, like, how is he able to do this? And apparently once a vampire ages, you know, he's like, what, 600 years or so old, he's had a chance to hone in on this ability. Obviously, he's leveled the fuck up, but it makes sense that he uses this against Buffy to make him vulnerable to him. And if he had not done any of this, then she would have made it out of there in that moment, because she would just tailed off and left, which is obviously the best thing. I remember watching this when I was a kid and being so scared of him in this moment and how fucked up it was of him. And over the years, as rewatching this episode, it always makes me feel really bad that he takes his last moment to talk shit to her, to terrify her, and takes pleasure in it. I mean, obviously he's a villain, so he's going to do that, but he presents her with the reality and the fact that if she hadn't come down there, then it would have been safe and the whole world would have just continued to turn. He would have been stuck down there, and secures in her very last moments the thoughts and feelings that she's going to have on her mind is of fear and failure. And I just thought that was awful and very pointed for the show to do as well, not just for its hidden context as well, for a man telling a woman like she's going to be this way type stuff as well. did not sit well with me. And then the fact that he doesn't even care to fully drain her. He just takes a little
Yes.
sip and
So
then
rude.
throws her ass down to the floor. And I'm like, what the fuck? If I was him, I would have drained her after what she did to all my brethren and then my most beloved Darla.
He is excited. He wants to get out of that prison. He wants to go find Colin wherever he went off to. He's like, I told you I'd meet you in the gym. I'm going to go meet you up there. So he didn't have time to drain Buffy, which is super rude once again. But we're glad he didn't.
To quote Taylor Swift, my boy only breaks his favorite toys. Also, that moment where he's like, the power, I can feel it in me. My headcanon is that he felt nothing. And he's just saying that because he had to pretend that he was feeling something.
For sure.
He's a phony.
That is true. But it does beg the question, like, why didn't he at least drink a little bit more of her blood? It looked like he just took a little nibble and then he was like, that's good, I'm done with you. I'm just like, you've been waiting this whole time. You've been talking shit. And then, mind you, I love that he says that about her dress, essentially carrying on the banter when he knows she can't say anything else.
Yeah, because he only wants to banter when he knows he's going to win because he'll get the last word.
Yeah, he's such a dick. Courtney, this is the first time that you watched this. Like, Buffy dies here. Are you shook?
Yeah. For sure. Obviously, since I'm alive, I know that's how the show goes on. But I do like to try and put myself in the position of what did it feel like watching it back when it first aired and not knowing fully if there is going to be a season 2, what could happen. So yeah, in that moment, I was like, dang, I wonder if the people that were watching this live on TV when it was airing were like, holy fuck. Wait, is that really it? That's it? She's dead? Because you don't know. Obviously, I knew because the show goes on that something must happen. But even in that moment, I didn't know if it was going to happen in that episode. I thought that they would be rude and leave you with like a cliffhanger and be like, to be continued. You got to wait till season 2 if she's alive or not.
So true. Actually, you're right. They could have left it there. Like if you're watching it first time, you're like, damn, I gotta wait like all summer.
I know. And, shows like to do that to you, especially these days. So it's kind of like one of those things where I was like, I bet you so many people were either terrified that this is where it would leave off and it would just kind of be like, it's an ending, but it's not the ending that you want, because not only do you obviously want her to like somehow live, but you don't want it to just flat out end here and then them leave you with that much of a cliffhanger where it's like, will she come back? Is she really dead? What the fuck is the master doing? Like, they could have left you so high and dry and been like, well, see you season 2, or maybe not.
Yeah.
Xander and Angel have arrived at the tunnel entrance, not in the nick of time. Angel comments that they are too late. The master has gone up. They flee into the lair. Angel quickly noticing that Buffy's laying there in the water. He rushes to her. Xander stopping in the opening. Angel checks her pulse frantically as Xander looks on. He looks to him saying that she is dead. Xander takes a big gulp, facing reality. And I commented for the first time because I noticed that Nicholas Brendan's facial expressions here, you can tell he has a heavy chest. His acting is on point, and you can feel his emotions through just the look of his eyes. Because I'm not looking at Xander. I'm like waiting for Angel to come back on the screen at this point anytime on a rewatch. But like, I was like, damn, like Nicholas Brendan really has some good moments on here where he like portrays something really, really well.
Yeah, we say this often about the characters that we critique the harshest because they deserve it. But we, for the most part, always say it's not about the performance that the actors are giving, though. Like the actors that make it onto Buffy are top tier in terms of vampire drama for the WB. like they're delivering everything they need to deliver, and it's up to us to critique what the character does, not so much what the actor does.
He kicks into action saying that she can't be dead. Angel notating, well, sir, she's not fucking breathing. So Xander saying, what if she drowned? Then there's a chance, CPR. And then he moves to obviously start performing it, and he's pumping on her chest and doing all the things. Courtney at this point in the episode is commenting, be like, boy, press harder, you ain't even doing nothing. I'm like, well, he can't break her ribs in real life, Courtney. Like, this isn't real CPR. Like, he's imitating it. And I'm flashing back to where I'm like, he's got good acting here, but I guess he wasn't doing CPR so well for her. Quickly cutting to Willow and Jenny back in the parking lot, getting closed in on by those vampires. A car screeches towards them and the sound is heard, and it's Cordelia pulling up, calling for them to get in. Back in the lair, Xander continues that CPR, still calling out for Buffy to come on, please breathe. She appears unresponsive and Angel bows his head down as Xander starts to give up. Then Buffy's eyes open and she takes her first breath. She looks around, then coughs up a shit ton of water. She notices Xander and calls out his name, who smiles so big at her and welcomes her back. The scene always confused me though. I want to know how you guys feel about it, because the way she comes back to life, originally watching this, she takes that breath and then that little sound cue we have, it almost makes us think like something more mystical happened in that moment versus just the CPR, because she doesn't immediately just wake up like any other person and just cough up the blood, cough up the water. That's usually what would happen upon CPR. They would start to regurgitate that water before they could even do anything else. So if anything, that breath would kind of happen, but she even looks around for a minute, and I was like, did this like some big reason bring her back? Was it a higher power or anything like that? That's what it always made me feel. But no, we really do chalk it up to the fact that Xander saved her. It was just him. Like CPR really saved our Slayer.
I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but I'm wondering if like they had a body double doing the shots of the hands on Buffy's chest, because if you watch closely, the hands on her chest are not moving fast enough for CPR. But when we're seeing it, the shot on Xander's face and he's pushing down, he seems to be moving a little faster.
Oh,
So they're not synchronized, and I was very critical of that. I'm like, this is not good CPR, Xander.
while Xander was eating his catered Subway, they had the other guy and they're doing the other takes with David. Exactly, it's canon. That's what we're gonna say it was. Jenny hops into Cordy's passenger seat, and Willow gets in the back as Cordelia informs him that she was just sitting there with Kevin, where her and Kevin used to park, aka make out, when all of a sudden those things started coming at her. A vampire leaps onto the windshield, growling at them, and they all scream. Jenny shouting, "What do we do now?" Willow stating, "They gotta get to the library." Cordelia sarcasming, "The library, great," aka her favorite place. She puts the pedal to the metal and sails across the parking lot. Slinging the vampires off, she hits a U-turn and turns back towards the school, approaching the doors. In this moment, Courtney is sitting there like hollering out. She's like, "Dude, didn't Cordelia not know how to drive?" And I was like, "Wait, just watch." And then she starts doing all this shit. Anyway, she puts the pedal to the metal and sails across the parking lot, slinging the vampire off as she hits a U-turn and turns back to the school, approaching the doors. Chasing down two vampires who run in front of her car away from them, Willow calling out, "Of course we generally walk there." The vampires leap out of the way as Cordelia quite literally drives the car with momentum through the door frame and into the school, shattering the wall and the frame as they sail down the hallway. Giles looks up from his book at the library table saying, "What the?" as Cordelia smashes through another set of door frames and comes hauling out just in front of the library doors, screeching to a stop. The three quickly exit the car as several vampires come running down the halls at them. They scream in panic, moving into the library and blocking the doors as the vampires try to barge in. Courtney was like commenting, she's like, "Why are they getting out the car?" She didn't know this was all setting up. She did not know at this point that the Hellmouth was the actual library or anything. She's like, "Why didn't they pick up Giles and keep going?" And I was like, because there's a reason. But Cordelia out here driving crazy, like I said when she was blinded in the witch episode, she took that defensive driving course a little bit too literally, because she fucked that school right on up. And I love Cordy here for this as well, because it just seems so right and so final for her to be arriving at this moment with the gang, and then also too the way that Cordelia made this just happen. She's like, I already got a knack for not getting her license, and now this.
Like, is Cordy going to face any reprisal for this? Because do they back the car out?
I think they back it out. I think before, and like they're all busy at the dance, not looking at the structural integrity of this building. No one's paying attention.
They're going to assume it was aftershock's from the earthquake when they get back to school on Monday morning. Snyder's going to be like, "Oh God, someone's going to sue." I'm really still just confused why he wasn't present at all this episode, but
yeah, whatever. He should have been around.
He was at the bronze, chaperoning the dance.
I guess that was the case. Hating on all the students. I don't feel like he would be there, but he'd have to be there and make the night awful. Giles screams out, "What's happening?" And Jenny screams back, "Guess." He moves to grab a bookcase, sliding it toward them at the doors. Willow picking up the library close on to smack their hands, and also arms breaking through the glass in the door. That shit was funny as fuck. Courtney was laughing as like when she's taking that fucking sign and like beating the vampires, and I was like, that ain't doing nothing, Willow, but she's trying her hardest. And we get a back shot from the stacks where a slimy demonic like tentacle is emerging from the cracks in the door. Up on top of the school, we see the master coming through the roof access door, peering out onto the city and honestly thinking this is such a ravishing view. He's so happy to be here, him stating that this beautiful world, basking in its glory. Down in the lair, Xander and Angel are helping Buffy get to her feet as she asks about the master, Angel informing how he's indeed gone up. She moves forward, Xander saying that no, she's weak, she needs to take it easy. She says, "Nah, I feel strong, I feel different." She looks back to them saying, "Let's go." in the library, they finally have learned what good barricading is supposed to look like. Because if you guys remember from Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, Willow and them, whenever they're like trying to barricade the room when Buffy leaves them with Owen in there, and they like slide the couch in front of the door, but then Willow even places the candy dish on the couch. Like, I don't understand what was going on. Giles, when he like first runs from the vampires in the episode 2 into the like crematorium room and shuts the door, locks it, and then tries to like throw the what is it, the coat rack or whatever, like side, and then it just falls right back into place and doesn't even fall in front of the door. Like, he pushes the filing cabinet, and that's about it against some strong ass vampires that we learned in the Harvest can just peel metal door frames down. Like, it's just very, I was like, what's happening here? This just does not
They
make
get
sense.
better at their barriers as time goes on.
Apparently.
They
So-
get more
It starts
powerful.
here, apparently.
Just to wind it back for a moment, Brendan, maybe this is the mystical thing that you picked up on when Buffy comes back to life, is she says she feels different, she feels powerful. So maybe like, you know, the cue that you picked up on wasn't her coming back to life, but it was after she came back to life, she got this like power upgrade, because it's like, a Slayer's never come back to life before.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, we'll level
She
her up
leveled
now.
I'm
up. Yeah,
forever
yeah.
confused on how she came back and still had her powers, though, because when one Slayer dies, and she did die, like, it should move on to someone else, you know? But Buffy's still alive, and she still has her things, and I guess she made it out.
Probably because it's Xander's breath that breathed life back into her, and Xander's the ultimate hero of this entire series. So that's why she's so powerful when she wakes up.
That's why she feels different. She's filled with emotional manipulation all of a sudden.
The toxicity flows through her now.
Now it's not the positive vibes.
They're not flowing. They're flowing from Xander. They're not. That's not what he has. That's not what he displays. Either way, they hear crashes come from behind them, and Giles screams that they are coming in through the stacks now as Willow and Jenny take off to move towards them and move bookshelves in front of the door frames. Giles calls out "my office" as glass breaks from a window in there, leaving Cordelia behind at the entrance alone. Poor Cordelia. They're like, "You got this, girl." A vampire's hand crashes in through the doors, grabbing Cordelia's arm, and she screams out, "Somebody help!" And I love that, because obviously we sway the camera right over and we get the cutscene transition magic, because who's on the way to help? Buffy. They got this whole power moment where they're walking up, and we got the Buffy theme playing, and it's so
awesome.
fucking corny, but it is awesome as
awesome.
shit. We love it. We're like, oh shit. It gives new meaning to the phrase like power walk in a literal way, because that's what she's doing. She's power walking because she's got that power that Cara just said she's been upgraded with. Buffy leading them on a mission, Xander asking how does she know where the master's going, and she replies that she just knows. Smiling as the solo vampire steps out to block the entrance, she calls out, "Oh look, a bad guy," making it to him as she smacks him back, and he falls to the ground knocked out, and we come to the door leading to the roof access, which has a huge hole punched through it. And I was like, holy shit, the master just like, yeah, got that shit. And I was like, all right, great. Like Buffy with the door frame in the first episode, breaking the whole door off the hinges. This poor school. Buffy tells Angel he better put on his game face, and he morphs into the vamp face, telling them that he's ready. She tells him that this won't take long and goes up as they stand there to take guard. And I like had a comment on how she didn't even take a weapon up there with her. She don't need anything, apparently. She was just going to go up there and, I guess, pummel him to death or something, because she's like got nothing around her on the roof access that she can use to slay this motherfucker.
That's what we love about Buffy. Buffy's resourceful. She
Runs
very
away.
rarely goes to anything with weapons, and you know, we're always like, come on, like something, but she's like, I'll figure something out, like when I get there. It's no big deal. Also, I want to add, like, I know that we're saying, like, did she come back from the dead and she has a power up now because she's a Slayer that went through all that? I don't know. I remember the first time I watched it, and I still feel it right now, that I think the reason why she's more powerful, why she seems more powerful, is just her attitude change. I think she was despairing, she was scared, she was nervous to die, and then now that that's all behind her and she's now past that, I think it's just easier to come into her own and feel confident and be like, well, the scary part's over, and now I'm here to kick ass because I already have it all in me. I was just insecure before.
No doubt. No doubt. I like that take. That's hot. I'm Paris Hilton all of a sudden.
That's hot. Loves it.
Hot take there. Hot steak. Isn't that what y'all call them? Hot steak.
We do.
In the library, Cordelia smacking the vampire's arm, not breaking free. She decides to sink her teeth firmly into his hand, and he screams, pulling his arm back, her snarking, "See how you like it." And that's probably one of my favorite quotes across the episode. Over with Ginny and Willow, vampires are trying to push past the bookcases they're holding at the frame. Willow saying that it's not going to hold much longer as that demonic tentacle finally loops around her lower leg and she screams out. Ginny screaming out ʲால்'s name in multiplicity. He comes running out of his office as we hear a big rumble begin and a huge demon with numerous heads come crashing out of the floor, strapping onto the wooden posts surrounding the bookcases. 훠ाl's taking notice of this, saying out to himself, the Hellmouth. And now we have arrived at the fact that the Hellmouth was right below them the whole entire time. And that makes sense why we'd be getting all those pans right outside the school when they're talking about the master and it going right below them because he's been underneath there the whole time. Cordelia looking on in horror at the demon as we get a close-up shot of it dripping mucus and it's hissing at them. This thing is so funny and comical at the end of the day that this fucking creature is funny. I love a visual effect, like when it comes to an actual special effect being practical versus CGI and all that stuff. And obviously we didn't have that nor a budget for it because we had to save it on the master's death, but all the things. Up above, the master looks down through the sky roof at them, clapping his hands gently to say, yes, come forth, my child, come into my world. And we hear Buffy's voice call out, I don't think it's yours just yet. He looks over to her astonished. You're dead, he says, her remarking back,
I may be dead, but I'm still pretty. Which is more than I can say for you.
Him confused angrily announces to her, you were destined to die. It was written. She shrugs her shoulders and reminds us of the fact that she's a degenerate student and says, I flunked the written. He puts out his hand and once again entrance her in that thrall, saying, come here, and her appearing to be succumbing to it, moving to him once more. Down below, Willow is still tangled up and nearly pulled into the creature's face as Ginny screams out to 𝗏 again, who picks up an axe and runs up to the second level and starts hacking at the monster who is almost closing bites in on Willow. And once again, I'm going to point out this freaking monster. Me and my sister, when we used to rewatch it, we used to play this clip back over, but there's that thing, and I'm going to imitate it for you guys, so I'm so sorry for this, but it's like, it's like barking at her, essentially. It's like sniffling and like snarling and stuff. It's just so comical. I couldn't take it seriously in this moment. I'm not actually scared of this big-ass creature because it's doing shit like this. Up above, the master walks to Buffy, grabbing her by the throat, telling her, do you really think you could best me here when you couldn't below? Removing his hand from her, staring into her eyes, her head tilts to the side and she glares at his face, saying, you have fruit punch mouth. Throwing him off guard. And I've been waiting on this moment the whole time because I directly pointed it out in the first few episodes saying, like, look at his mouth, Courtney, look at his mouth. You see how he's got like stained, like he's been drinking so much blood. He's got all this stuff. And then when the moment hit, she laughed out loud so hardcore. It was funny.
I really did.
Confused, he asks what, and she sends a punch to his face, knocking him off balance, saying that he can save the hypnosis shit for the tourists. He stands back up and she sends a roundhouse kick to his face. He swings an arm at her, scratching his nails across her chest, drawing blood. She goes in on his ass, punching him twice in the stomach, and he blocks her from hitting his face, hitting hers instead. 𝗏's still attacking the monster. It decides it's had enough of him and slams its head into him, sending him over the railing hard, crashing onto the table as it shatters and breaks in half, knocking up onto its side as a jagged, pointed piece of large desk wood is angled upward. A couple vampires attack Angel and Xander at their station, and they fight them off, Angel staking one of them. We get the off-screen �2K/slay because we ain't got the budget for Angel slaying vampires on screen yet. We got to save that for his show. The demon in the library closing back in on Willow and Ginny. The master and Buffy continue to duel. He approaches her, but she does a flip-de-doo over his head and lands behind him, kicking his backside. I was like, oh my god, I can't just call this a flip over the head like I normally do because you guys are here.
It's a flippy-doo.
That is the technical term.
Technical term coined by Prophecy Girls. He turns and grabs her neck again, asking where are her jibes now. The sun window just behind her, she glances down into the library to notice the jagged wood below. He continues to ask her, will she laugh when his hell is on Earth? She grabs him by the neck, squeezing hard as she can, him starting to squeal, telling him if he's that amped about hell, then he can go there. She picks him up and he flip-de-doos over her and somersaults right into the window, crashing through it, falling down onto the desk wood piece, piercing him directly through his back, and he screams out as his body begins to dissipate into black ash, slower than normal vampires, leaving his skeletal remains behind. As he dies, the demon is sucked back into the earth, and it appears the imminent doom is over. That's an on-point slayer. This bitch dropped him from above and had some precision. He falls and his ass is actually like falling towards it. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be bad for him. And then it really turns out bad for him because it actually hits his heart and not his anus. Talk about getting pierced by that. But they also had to save all of that money for the vampires being dusted. And like, because we didn't see an on-screen slay from episode 8 to 11 at all. And didn't even really see vampires. But here we got the ultimate �2K per slay in the form of probably like $10,000.
I was going to say, that's a 10K slay right there.
That's a
That's what I
10.
said.
Yeah.
As soon as it happened, I was like, that was a 10K slay.
And then
Because
you
not only was it like so much more extra, but I feel like it lasted like a full on 17 seconds, whereas all the other ones are like 3 seconds and then they're gone. But the Masters was like, we're going to keep this
Yeah.
dirt flowing like all up in the air.
Very cool.
Everyone throw your dirt piles.
Yeah, it's wild that just because he's dead, though, this demon like got sucked back into the earth. I was always kind of confused by this. What about the master was so great that like made this demon want to come? You'd think like even if he died, this thing would be like, all right, I'm still gonna come on out. Like I don't.
Well, the
get
Hellmouth is closing because the Master's being defeated.
But like, what is his power over the Hellmouth? Like he didn't even do the ritual like he was trying to perform to open the Hellmouth in the first story we've heard. So I don't know. It's
Like, we still have lots of
The,
questions.
the Master was edging the Hellmouth, and it did not come, and now it's closing.
Kara season 1 Prophecy Girls would not say that shit. I'm just saying, Stephanie, I was telling Courtney about how you turned this bitch out, and that's why y'all are dirty girls.
We are the dirtiest of girls. I mean, you guys will be too. Once you're done season 7, you'll say whatever. You'll just start saying things like I never thought I'd say
Seth has
that in my life.
corrupted me.
It's dangerous for us. We already say whatever.
I have a
Alright.
question now after 7 seasons of watching this show and now rewatching this episode. Is the library in the basement? Like, is the library like how come how there is a basement in this school? We saw it in Nightmares.
It's down below that even.
So like, did that monster have to go through a couple layers of school before it came out dramatically from the library?
It came
You
out of
know?
the blood pool that the master came out, and that's why it had no blood, and it was just mucus on it because everything's repellent from that thing. So that's where it stemmed up from.
It's the most bloodless blood river ever.
I'm just saying, I don't get why it comes out of the library floor unless the library is in the basement.
Maybe
Like,
the library lacks the basement. Maybe they only built a basement for half the school and they said, you know what, fuck this basement.
Yeah,
I love
monsters
that.
got
Students are
some
only going to come down here to smoke and apparently be like attacked by the ugly man.
Yeah,
So
I guess
we'll
so.
only do it for half the size.
They're like, when we surveyed the land before we built the school, we realized that there is a giant hellhole right there. So we're just
And
gonna
in
build the basement around it and don't ask questions.
Yes, in true Sunnydale fashion, we just build right over it.
Yeah.
The evil made them do it. Well, we can finally bring our episode to a close. Soft piano keys begin to play as Cordelia gets up from the floor, opening the library doors to let Buffy, Angel, and Xander pass through. Walking in, moving over to the Master's remains. We hear the music as a gentle tune of the Buffy theme playing in the background, and it's so fucking beautiful. As Giles asks about all the vampires that were out there, and Cordelia says that they're gone. The Master, Angel asks, dead, Giles says, looking over to his skeleton, adding that the Hellmouth is closed. Buffy just staring at the Master's remains. He calls out to her, struggling to get her attention at first, but she breaks from her gaze to look over at him, apologizing, saying that it's been a really weird day. Xander adding, yeah, Buffy died and everything. Willow remarking, wow, harsh. She's gotten 2 harsh moments this day. Giles pleasantly smiles at Buffy and states, I should have known that wouldn't have stopped you. She looks at him and smiles, tears heavy in her eyes. Jenny asks the group, well, what do we do now? Giles saying, I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't like this place much anymore. He's like, I gotta get the fuck out of this library. I'm done with it. Xander brings up the dance at the Bronze that could be fun. Cordelia chiming in, yeah, let's go to that, because that's where I would rather be. Willow looking over and calling out Buffy's name, who replies,
Sure. We save the world. I say we party.
looking down at her attire, then back up, finishing, I mean, I got all pretty. Jenny, staring at the Master's remains, asks, what about him? Buffy turns to face him and says he's not going anywhere, snarking at him to call him a loser. They all begin to file out, Giles taking the lead to say that he's not going to dance at this event. Jenny saying, we'll see about that. Willow telling Angel that he can come with them. Xander commenting on what was the story with the car in the hallway, and Cordelia's like, oh yeah, that was me. I did that. I drove that fucker through here. Buffy saying aloud, I am really, really hungry. Everyone is happy and laughing as Angel turns to look at Buffy before passing through the doors to tell her, by the way, I really like your dress. She just says back to him, yeah, it's a big hit with everyone. The camera drifts away from them. We back over the ceiling shot to the Master's remains laying there, and we fade to black. And here endeth season 1.
Yay.
Listen, this episode makes you feel so much all over it. I was even watching this time with Courtney, and I still had the lump in my throat, like I said earlier, with the prophecy. And even in the end, like I was like trying to fight back tears because of the piano version of the slow music. I'm just like, oh, our little baby's here. And then I was like, I know everything that comes next. But this is the moment for me that Buffy the Vampire Slayer changes, because without spoiling, obviously, season 2, it's insanely different. She fights differently. The stakes are raised tremendously, and the character development situations significantly change and alter the course of the show. And it's all because of the events that took place place in Prophecy Girl. Some of my favorite takeaways are the fact that I was always stoked upon the completion of this episode, that Cordelia, Jenny, and Angel stand with the core group, bringing an expansion to their numbers, and now we have a fuller, diverse Scooby Gang assembled. It's not just the main four anymore. A special note to Cordelia for being right there in the mix, as I said earlier as well, helping them in the end, and a big mention to Xander for raising our Slayer from the dead. We got to give him kudos on that. But these are intentional acts of heroism as I saw them from those two people in small ways, not big heroism, but and I love more than anything the nurturing vibes that we finally got in this episode between Buffy and Giles. We know officially that like they are so connected to one another moving forward from this. Him saying that like final statement to her that he should have known that wouldn't have stopped her is just music to my ears every time I hear it, because it's awesome. And we are here at the climax of season 1, and our bad bitch Buffy stands in her power. She's faced the odds, and even through death, I know this makes her stronger than the end.
My closing thought is I hope that right after the dance, Buffy goes straight to therapy, and that's what I hope for her.
Oh, that's a good closing thought.
Courtney-
And Xander needs to join her, obviously.
Yeah,
We're
Xander needs to
watching
go
when she was
far
dead.
away.
We're
When
watching
does she tell them that she died?
Buffy
Xander said
died.
it in the library. Yeah, he said Buffy died and everything, and Willow's like, harsh.
They're like, damn, that sucks. Let's go dance.
I have a whole section on metaphor that's we're going to breeze by really quick, because obviously we've been talking about the metaphors in the show, and I get all my stuff from Mark Field's book because I really enjoyed that over the years reading it. But we talked about in our season opener about the metaphor for adulthood and how Buffy was on the journey toward it. Vampires representing the stunted growth and forever young energy. Here's where we conclude the first steps in that journey and how Buffy has taken those steps towards becoming an adult. Buffy's death is a metaphorical death of her childhood. Once revived, she's got newfound strength and demonstrates a commitment to her destiny. She's no longer chosen, and this time she has chosen. A key scene in this episode is Buffy's power walk to the front with for the Master. It is highlighting the fact that Buffy is finally committed to her destiny, and that is the metaphor for growing up. She is now committed to growing up, and the Buffy theme playing over it is the only time we hear it across the episode, but it signifies that she is Buffy the Vampire Slayer here. She is now prepared to leave childhood behind and take the steps to becoming an adult. The Master symbolizes everything awful about adulthood as well. He's old, wrinkled, and he's controlling. Buffy doesn't want to be like this, and the Hellmouth being a metaphor for her subconscious, that's why the Master is there. In the Nightmare episode, the Master comments on fear being in the mind and how we can face our fear, but how we can master it when he goes and touches the cross and all of that. So when she freed the Master, she took her fear out of the subconscious and put it into the actual world where she could deal with it. The Anointed is also seen as a mirror image of Buffy's childhood as he is a child. That's how she recognizes him as her destiny and goes off with him just so quickly and willingly. Once again, this is just contextual to a person's opinion on it, but I see these same kind of points and it raises these things. But now for the final leap, she needs help from all of her attributes, not just her conscious mind. By recognizing and coming to terms with Cordelia, who we've spoken before is like a shadow side of Buffy, and most people put that portrayal of them being paired because she has integrated her personality from her conscious and subconscious mind. She needs Cordelia's determination and ruthlessness to defeat the Master, and that's the component she gets in the show's metaphor from her. To sum up season 1 in Mark Field's view, though, is the steps that we take along going from teenager to adulthood. And we all know this as Buffy watchers, that the first season is all about the acceptance, embracing one's destiny, and coming to terms with the unexpected responsibility of being the chosen one. The first season obviously heavily features Buffy's struggle to reconcile her normal teenage life with extraordinary burden of being the Slayer, often trying to deny her powers or run away from her responsibilities. And as the season progresses, Buffy begins to understand the importance of her powers and gradually accepts her role as a Slayer, forming bonds with her friends and allies who will support her in this journey. And that's what I have for metaphor.
Nice.
I had some fun facts here. Mark Field commented in his book that as a resident of California, he can attest that exactly after an earthquake happens, they all guess the magnitude of what it is. So he liked that the 5.1 quote was in there. Buffy's dress, often sacrificial garments worn in a white dress attire, was what helped signify people's death and their journey and stuff. If you've seen the movie Midsommar, everybody's wearing white and all of that stuff in it because it's a way to appear fresh and clean and ready to be born anew as such. Same thing with baptism. So that was a big symbolic thing there, not just a tie from the movie. But also Angel's comment to Buffy about her dress, and her comment stating, yeah, it's a big hit, was added post-production and wasn't a part of the original script. And I said it earlier because Steph was saying that this is in her top 10, and this also is in Joss Whedon's ranked top 10 favorite episodes list, noting because this was the first time, besides telling directors what to do, that he actually got to direct. And it was the first time that he got to kill Buffy and the first season ender. And it was the first time that he realized he could do anything that he wanted to and tie it up in a bow by the season's end, because obviously they filmed that whole season beforehand. But my mecca of fun fact is that I'm sure you guys saw it along the COVID journey in 2020. Sarah Michelle Gellar was sitting at home bored, and she decided to get her white dress that she still has from Prophecy Girl and put it on with a leather jacket and take a picture. And she had the caption on her Instagram saying, "All dressed up and nowhere to go. I say we party." And it was like she hashtagged Prophecy Girl in that post. And I thought that was a fun fact that she put the dress back on and she still fucking has it. Of all the things, she's like, I don't have much from that show, but she's like, I still got that dress.
Nice.
We can move on to our final slays.
Final slays.
So for quote of the episode, I have technically 3. I like where Cordelia says after she bites the vampire, "See how you like it," because it's a fun little call out to vampires biting people, obviously. I like where Buffy tells the master that he has fruit punch mouth. And then the ending quote with her was saying, "We saved the world, I say we party," because she got all pretty.
I really thought Cordy was funny when she said that in reference to whenever she bit the vampire back and she's like, "See how you like it."
Mine is when Jenny says, the part that gets me though is where Buffy is the vampire slayer. She's so little. Because one of Buffy's greatest strengths is that she's always underestimated because of the way she looks.
Yeah.
Giles, I'm 16 years old. I don't want to die.
A classic. Who would you guys award Shining Slayer?
Buffy.
Well, y'all are going to hate mine because mine is Xander.
Mine's Buffy.
But it's literally whether he gave great CPR or not, which we'll just leave up to, your own speculation. I'm going to say not. But regardless, it got the job done. And if it hadn't been for that, since obviously Angel was useless in that scenario, since he has no breath, then we would have no Buffy. So at least there's that. He did one thing good.
Courtney, you actually misheard that line. He said he had no breath mint. And that's why he didn't want to do the CPR.
Yeah.
Well, either way, he was useless because he wasn't jumping at the opportunity to save her, which you would think if anyone would.
It'd be Joss Whedon. Oh, I mean, Xander. Yeah.
Yeah.
Standing. Mine's obviously Buffy because she defeated the master and she's a true badass. Around here with the show, the Wiggins is a big thing, and we go every week with a weekly Wiggins. Mine was Xander asking out Buffy and that whole awkward scene and interaction. That was the only thing I could really pick apart that gave me like the ugh.
Yeah, and mine was what followed, which was him asking Willow out because he couldn't handle his rejection and just sit there with it for a second.
The bite sex between Master and Buffy.
It is kind of awkward the way he pulls her up to him, like, and stands behind her. I was like, "Ooh, this is kind of skeezy." Like,
it didn't need to be that sexual,
The master's fruit punch mouth.
Touching
that
Buffy's
always
neck.
gives me the weekly wigs.
Okay. We do a little thing too for Slayerette predictions because Courtney is our featured Slayerette as a watcher for the first time. And I wanted to say that now that you've been through season 1, you obviously know that this is the cover for Buffy season 1, correct? As you've seen it plastered everywhere. And now moving along for season 2, this is going to be what the season's box set and what the advertisement for it is. Sexy, sexy. With that being said,
ooh, that is sexy.
What do you think that season 2 has in store for us?
Well, obviously a huge Angel Buffy love centric situation is what stands out to me the most. And honestly, which is what I was hoping for, because I've kind of been waiting for it this season and I knew they weren't going to be like, let's dive fully into this right away, not knowing where we're going to go with the show. But I hope that they give me all the juice I've been waiting for, because I'm like, I need to see this evolve more rapidly. It's been taking a long time.
I like you,
They're
Courtney.
doing a lot of back and forth.
I like you.
You can stay.
We're Bangel stands over here.
I know this is your podcast, but you can stay.
Yeah, you can stay where you are.
Well,
also, we forgot to tell them accidentally yesterday, and I think it was just because I was delirious, but we're gonna start calling anytime that Xander and Willow appear on screen together, we're calling them Zillow.
Zillow.
Save
That's
time.
only because I was talking really fast yesterday, so I accidentally called Willow Zillow, but then it made sense because
Courtney,
I was like,
just
it's like them together.
Oh,
Just like when they're together on a scene, so that way I could be like, Zillow enter the halls versus like Willow and Xander are hanging out. Like, but
Why are you
not
shaking
for
your head?
not for a ship.
you'll have to find out.
yeah.
Oh,
I got nothing to say to that.
Well, here we are, finished with our first season. What a fun little introduction into this world, and there's still so much to come, and this ride is not over. That being said, we will be back next week for a season 1 wrap-up where we will dive into our review of the first 12 episodes and conclude our final thoughts of the season as a whole before we move on to season 2. I can't wait. We want to thank Prophecy Girls, Steph and Cara, for being here and joining us and making this recording extra special. We enjoyed having you guys so much, and I 100% invite you guys back for future episodes if you ever have the time to spare to come back. But until then, where can we find you guys?
Karaoke.
You can find us anywhere podcasts are listened to, Prophecy Girls. The website is prophecygirls.ca. We are most active on Instagram as well as TikTok. We have a Discord, prophecygirls.ca/Discord. So yeah, check us out.
Thank you to our listeners on this journey with us so far, and all of the ones finding us for the first time in the future. Write in and let us know your thoughts on Buffy Season 1. Let us know your take on the Season 1 finale and how you feel about this one. Stay tuned, as I said, for our Season 1 wrap-up episode and the premiere of Season 2 coming on January 10th of 2025. Until then, we will catch you guys in the new year back here in Sunnydale. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buffy on Revamped. Remember to join us next week for a new episode release as we continue our journey through Sunnydale. We also would like to hear from you, so share your thoughts. Discuss with us your perspectives on this or previous week's episodes by following us on Instagram and sending us a DM at revamped_rewatch podcast.
Or by emailing us at revampedrewatchpod@gmail.com. Additionally, we will be choosing one of your messages to shout out in an upcoming episode release. And don't forget, if you're looking for a friend and some unsolicited advice for the times when life feels out of orbit, go follow Life in Retrograde Podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, the Earth is definitely doomed. This podcast is dedicated to the Buffyverse, to its fans, and my sister, Tiffany Dawn Pearson.